Chapter 1236. Go and investigate immediately. I want to know who dared to touch my disciple. In the study room, Yao Shu angrily slammed his palm on the table and shouted angrily, anyone who hurts my disciple, I will make them die a horrible death. Other than being his disciple, Yao Mingqi was also his illegitimate daughter. Because there was a tigress at home, he had arranged for Yao Mingqi and her daughter to stay outside. It was also because of this that he felt so indebted to Yao Mingqi. Elder. The people below looked at Yao Shu carefully and said, everyone in the world is saying that Mrs. Hands and feet are not clean, that's why she was crippled. Bullshit. My disciple was pampered and had everything she wanted. Why would she need to steal other people's belongings? Yao Shu's eyes were spitting fire. Someone must be framing us, you must get to the bottom of this. Yes, Elder. Everyone cupped their fists and replied respectfully. At this moment, an old man beside Yao Shu pondered for a moment, then asked, Elder Yao Shu, do you think this matter was done by Su Kong and the others? After all, the headmaster has always been elusive, I haven't seen him for many years. Now that the Western Continent Academy has returned to the two great sects, our two great sects have been fighting endlessly, I think that Su Kong and the others are the biggest suspects. A ruthless light flashed across Yao Shu's eyes, if I find out that it was Su Kong and the others who hurt my daughter, I will definitely make them die a horrible death. In front of these people, he no longer called Yao Mingqi his disciple, but instead called her his daughter. Other than a few people, many people in the outside world did not know about the relationship between him and Yao Mingqi. I don't think that's possible. Another old man was silent for a moment. No matter how much Su Kong and the others fight with us, they wouldn't do such a thing that would provoke public anger. Humph. Yao Shu coldly snorted, what's impossible? You don't know a person's face. Out of the 10 people on the heaven list, 6 of them are in our hands, and they only control 4 people. Therefore, they must want to eliminate some of our disciples. Furthermore, Mingqi is my daughter, so of course she became their first target of revenge. Yao Shu gnashed his teeth in hatred. He was even more certain that other than the few people in the void, no one else would have the strength and courage to do such a cruel thing. Not only did they cripple her daughter, they even slandered her for having dirty hands and feet. Why would her own daughter covet the money of others? Compared to the West Continent Academy, which was in constant turmoil, Yun Luofeng was not affected in the slightest. At this moment, she was holding a dual invitation in her hand. She raised her eyebrows and looked at the delicately crafted dual invitation seriously. I knew it. It's definitely over. Nciheo stood beside Yun Luofeng and muttered, of all the people you could have challenged, why did you challenge Hu Lin? Senior brother Hu Li has issued a challenge to you. If you agree to it, you'll surely suffer his revenge, and if you don't, you'll be viewed as a coward. Why should I agree? Yun Luofeng casually threw the letter of challenge away. His lips curled into a smile, I have no interest in accepting the challenge. The reason he challenged the disciples on the Earth ranking was so that he could stay in the academy. Since she could stay, why should she continue to fight? But, if you don't accept the challenge, Hu Li will come looking for trouble with you. Nciheo was deeply worried. No matter what, he did not want Yun Luofeng to be in any danger. Chapter 1237. I don't want to accept the challenge, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of him. Yun Luofeng stretched lazily. You can go back first. I'm going to start cultivating. All right. Nciheo stood up helplessly. Miss, let's go. Little Loli blinked her eyes and held Nziheo's hand as they walked out of the room. The moment the door closed, little Loli turned to look at Nziheo. Brother Nziheo, you're too wordy. I think she knows what she's doing. Miss, that's a genius on the heaven list. Do you think Miss Yun can handle him? Nsiheo sighed. He frowned and became even more worried. Little Loli turned to look at Yun Luofeng's closed door. Her large eyes shone brightly. I have confidence in her. Even little Loli herself didn't know where this confidence came from. However, she knew that Yun Luofeng wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Nsiheo grew increasingly worried. However, he was too weak and couldn't do anything, let alone help Yun Luofeng. I'm hungry, Brother Ziheo. Little Loli was afraid that Nsiheo would continue chattering and hurriedly changed the topic. She blinked her large, watery eyes as she spoke. Seeing little Loli's gaze, Nsiheo's heart melted. He hurriedly said, Miss, I'll take you to eat now. All right. The little Loli smiled. Her smile was innocent and pure. It was as bright as the sun, shining into the dark hearts of those people. You said that Yun Luofeng rejected the challenge. Inside the exquisite and luxurious room, Huli heard the person's report. His pair of fox-like eyes narrowed. Since she rejected my challenge, then I'll personally go meet this girl. Yes, Brother Huli. After this person finished speaking, Huli had already stood up. He walked out of the room and headed in Yun Luofeng's direction. Yun Luofeng had just entered a state of cultivation when she heard footsteps coming from outside the room. She suddenly opened her eyes. At the same time, the room's door was pushed open. The moment she saw the man, only one word appeared in her mind. A stunner. That's right. No matter what word was used to describe a man, it was not as fitting as the word stunner. Yun Luofeng. The man raised his eyebrows and stared at Yun Luofeng, who was sitting cross-legged. A cunning light flashed in his eyes. Huli. Yun Luofeng looked at the man and asked calmly. I like your expression very much. Huli narrowed her eyes slightly. I just don't know if I like your strength as well. Yun Luofeng paused. Whether or not I can make you like me, what does that have to do with me? If there's nothing else, don't disturb my cultivation. I want to fight you. Huli drew his sword and pointed it at Yun Luofeng. At this moment, there were already many disciples surrounding the room. When they saw Huli coming to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng, their eyes flashed with interest. I'm busy. However, in the face of Huli's arrogance, Yun Luofeng merely replied with a single word. What if I insist on fighting you? Huli's eyes flashed with a dangerous glint as she raised the corners of her lips and asked. Yun Luofeng closed his eyes and no longer paid any attention to this annoying man. However, the colder Yun Luofeng's attitude towards him, the more excited he became. Yun Luofeng, fight me. If you win, you can set any conditions you want, Huli said excitedly. If I win, I want you to be my subordinate for 3 years and wait for my orders. Chapter 1238. Yun Luofeng slowly opened his eyes, and his devilish gaze landed on Huli. You really want to fight me? That's right, Huli raised his chin. If you don't agree today, I will pester you until you do. Alright, Yun Luofeng pondered for a moment. If I win, I also want you to be loyal to me for 3 years. How about it? Huli was stunned for a moment, then he suddenly burst into laughter. Interesting, this is really interesting. Alright, I promise you. As long as you can beat me, forget about being your subordinate for 3 years. What's wrong with 10 years? Alright, Yun Luofeng replied, don't forget what you said. If I win, you will be loyal to me for 10 years. Huli's laughter was suddenly blocked in his chest, choking him until he could not help but cough. His handsome face turned red. This woman really knew how to climb up a pole. He had only casually said it and 3 years had become 10 years. But who asked him to bring it up? He could only grit his teeth and swallow it down. All right. 10 years it is. Huli gritted his teeth and said, "Then when do we start fighting?" Now, after the storm caused by Yao Mingqi, another storm swept through the academy. The genius Huli, who was ranked 10th on the heaven list, was actually going to fight with a new student. Especially the bet between the two, whoever lost would have to be loyal to the other. This was simply unheard of. Of course, many of the academy's disciples thought that Huli was bullying Yun Luofeng. After all, with Yun Luofeng's strength as a saint spirit, it was impossible for him to be Huli's match. The martial arts arena was a boiling cauldron of voices, and the inside and outside were filled with people. On the stage of the martial arts arena, a young girl dressed in snow-white clothes exuded an evil aura. Her fine black hair fluttered without any wind, and she was peerlessly moving. In front of the young girl was a man of peerless elegance. The man's fox-like eyes contained a cunning light, and a smile appeared on his jade-like face. His eyes were filled with interest, as if Yun Luofeng, who was in front of him, was an interesting plaything. "Senior brother Huli is very strong, this woman will definitely lose miserably." In the academy, senior brother Huli's beauty is obvious to all, and his strength is extraordinary. "If I can marry such a man, I can die without regrets." The women's eyes were filled with red hearts as they stared unblinkingly at the man's perfect face. If they could become a woman by Huli's side, they would wake up laughing even in their dreams. Yun Luofeng. Huli raised his eyebrows and looked down at the young girl standing in front of him. "Remember our bet. If I win, you will serve me for 3 years." Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. "I'm afraid you won't have that chance." Boom! At this moment, both of their auras surged out at the same time, creating quite a storm in the arena. Ha! Huli laughed maniacally, his black hair dancing in the wind. "Yun Luofeng, do you believe me when I say that the winner of this battle will definitely be me?" One was a strong cultivator who had already broken through to become a saint king, while the other was a high-level holy spirit. Their strength could not be compared at all. Therefore, not only did Huli have such confidence, even the others felt that it was impossible for Yun Luofeng to win this battle. Yun Luofeng's eyes gradually became more serious. The difference between a holy spirit and a saint king was not just a difference in level, but a difference in quality. However, she would not lose no matter what. Chapter 1239. Yun Luofeng, take out your weapon. Huli looked at the empty-handed Yun Luofeng and the corners of his lips curled up. "I never fight with empty-handed people." Yun Luofeng did not hesitate and took out his sword from his spatial ring and held it tightly in his hand. "You're ruffianswa?" Huli asked in surprise as he glanced at Yun Luofeng's left hand. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. "My left hand is enough to deal with you." The young girl's voice was extremely arrogant, but it also angered Huli. His long and narrow eyes were tinged with a mocking smile. "Then don't blame me for not giving you a chance." As soon as he finished speaking, Huli's body leaped and shot towards Yun Luofeng like a bolt of lightning. "It's over." Below the arena, Nziheo hurriedly covered his eyes, not daring to look at this cruel scene. No matter how strong Yun Luofeng was, he could not possibly be Huli's opponent. So, the ending was within everyone's expectations. Although senior brother Huli is ranked 10th on the sky list, his speed is the fastest out of everyone here. Even the top few on the heaven list would need to expend some effort to fight him. With just this speed, senior Huli can fight with a middle-stage Saint King. Even a middle-stage Saint King cannot escape from his attack, let alone Yun Luofeng. The crowd discussed animatedly as they looked at Yun Luofeng with sympathy. However, facing Huli who was about to enter her, Yun Luofeng slowly closed her eyes. Everyone thought that she had been scared silly and did not even have the courage to look at Huli, let alone resist. No one knew that the current Yun Luo Feng had become a world of her own. Back then, the scenes in the celestial spirit mirror flashed through her mind in a flash, causing her to become extremely calm. It was so calm that only the sound of the wind could be heard. What is she doing? In the arena, on the viewing platform, Mu Ran lowered his head in surprise and looked at Yun Luo Feng, whose eyes were lightly closed. His eyes were filled with doubt. Ji Yen, the hall master of the beast-taming hall, fell silent. After a while, he said, "If Hu Li wants to compete on the heaven list, with his speed, even the 5th place might not be able to defeat him. Even if the opponent is stronger than him, to be honest, even I might not be able to capture all of Hu Li's movements." Because Hu Li did not want to compete on the heaven list, after he reached the 10th place, there was no more movement. If I'm not wrong. Ji Yan paused and continued. She gave up on observing Hu Li's movements with her eyes and chose to use her ears to distinguish sounds. Mu Li's ears to distinguish sounds in a battle. He could not do such a dangerous thing. One had to admit that Yun Luo Feng, this girl's guts were not small. "Muran, is this the little girl that Qin Yuqing recommended to you?" Ji said. Ji Yen, Luo out, Ji Li. Yen, Ji Li, Yun, Luo, of who, Ji, said Li. Ji of Yun Luofeng's attainments as a spiritualist are so high. Don't join in the fun. Mu Ran, so what if I'm the hall master of the beast-taming hall? Who set the rule that only beast-taming disciples can exist in the beast-taming hall? Anyway, I've taken a fancy to this girl. How about you trade a flame blood lion for her? I won't trade. Mu Ran scoffed. Even if you trade a dragon and a phoenix for her, I won't trade. She's a good seedling. If you train her well, she'll be more precious than any treasure. Chapter 1240. Ji Yen pursed his lips, feeling very regretful in his heart. Why did this kind of seedling choose to go to a Spirit Master's Academy? And the outstanding disciples that the Spirit Master's Academy nurtured were all provided for the morning hall. Pity, truly a pity. Such a genius had missed him by a hair's breadth. Wind. The whistling sound grew louder and louder. Hu Li's expression was originally one of disapproval, but when she saw that Yun Luo Feng had dodged her attack, shock flashed across her beautiful face. The surrounding crowd was stunned as well. They'd thought that Yun Luo Feng would definitely be defeated in one move, but she'd actually dodged it. Their eyes must be playing tricks on them. How could Yun Luo Feng have dodged Hu Li's attack? Everyone hurriedly rubbed their eyes and forced them open, but all they saw was the completely unharmed girl in white standing on the stage. This time, the girl simply tore off a piece of her sleeve and tied it over her eyes. The corners of her lips curled into an evil smile. That's enough, let's continue. Those 3 months of training in the Sky Spirit Realm weren't completely useless to her. For the people of the world, their eyes were extremely important. If they couldn't see the battle clearly, they would inevitably return in defeat. But for her, her eyes had already become a burden at this moment. It was very easy for the eyes to be confused by the scenery of the outside world, and what they saw might not be true. However, the ears would always be able to distinguish the true direction. Yun Luo Feng. Hu Li narrowed her fox eyes slightly, and her smile was very sinister and cunning. You're different from anyone I've ever met. And the more you're like this, the more I want you to become my follower. After saying these words, Hu Li moved again. His figure was still as fast as lightning, and there were rows of afterimages following behind him. Yun Luo Feng felt the whistling sound of the wind and leaned to the side, narrowly dodging Hu Li's attack. At the same time, the sword in her hand descended from the sky and chopped downwards. Boom! The stage was instantly chopped into two, and dust filled the air. Yun Luo Feng quickly flashed behind Hu Li, and his long sword chopped downwards again. Hu Li sensed the threat behind him and turned around, using his sword to block the long sword. Bang! The shock wave spread out from the two of them. It was so strong that the disciples near the arena were sent flying, falling to the ground in a sorry state. Yun Luofeng took 2 steps back and a mouthful of blood came from her throat. She forcefully swallowed it down, and the smile on her lips contained a trace of coldness. Even if she had broken through Hu Li's speed, there was still a huge gap between the two of them. If this continued, she would definitely not be Hu Li's opponent. Similarly, Hu Li also took 2 steps back in the face of the storm. He shook his somewhat numb arm and narrowed his fox-like eyes. His gaze gradually turned solemn. It looked like he had underestimated this girl. Her strength was definitely not just that of a high-level holy spirit. On the viewing platform, Mu Ran gazed at the 2 people below, and his brows knit together lightly. Ji Yan, who do you think will win between these two? Ji Yan went silent, and then he shook his head. If it was before the competition, I would definitely say it's a fool. There's no suspense between a saint king and a saint spirit. But now, I notice that I'm slightly unable to see through it. Thinking of this, Ji Yan laughed self-deprecatingly. He had lived for so many years, yet he was unable to distinguish between a saint spirit and a saint king. If word of this got out, many old fellows would probably laugh at him. The battle between the two of them attracted many onlookers. Chapter 1241. Wang Yizhi and his nephew were also standing in the crowd, glaring at Yun Luofeng viciously. This damned girl dared to attack me, and now she has offended Hu Li. Her good days are over. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth in hatred. He had thought that Yun Luofeng would be expelled from the steward's hall according to the school rules for beating up his uncle. Who would have thought that the hall master of the morning hall would actually defend a woman like Yun Luofeng? He even suggested that she would be exempted from punishment if she entered the earth roll within 5 days. He did not think much of it at first. Entering the earth roll within 5 days. How was that possible? A new student could never do that. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Yun Luofeng challenged a genius on the earth roll in a single day and even defeated him. Moreover, her strength as a holy spirit was revealed to everyone. So what? Yun Luofeng could have challenged anyone, but she chose Hu Lin. Who didn't know that Hu Lin had a younger brother on the heaven roll? Just as he had expected, Hu Li immediately came to cause trouble for Yun Luofeng after finding out that her brother had matured. Ha ha ha. Wang Mujing could imagine Yun Luofeng's miserable ending and could not help but laugh out loud. His laughter was sinister and cruel. Yun Luofeng, you have to pay the price for being too arrogant. In the crowd, apart from Wang Yizhi and Nziheo, there was also an old man who was looking at Yun Luofeng anxiously. This old man was none other than the old man who had been in charge of the registration and had introduced Yun Luofeng to the other elders. An elder's disciple is in conflict with Hu Li. Logically speaking, I should go and tell the other elders, but the elders have recently been overwhelmed by a matter. If I let them worry about this matter, I'm afraid it will affect the progress of that matter. The old man wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Forget it, I'll take a look at the situation first. If Miss Yun is really in danger, I'll inform the elders in time. This disciple of the elders was really good at stirring up trouble. First, she beat up Wang Yizhi, then she challenged a genius on the earth roll, causing a commotion. Now, she even accepted Hu Li's challenge. However, the old man did not expect Yun Luofeng to be a holy spirit. She really hid her strength well. The old man smiled helplessly. He didn't know what kind of uproar it would cause if the elders found out about this. Boom! On the arena, a storm was brewing. Yun Luofeng took another 2 steps back. She wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stared at Huli with her deep black eyes. Huli was not as peerless as he had been before. He appeared to be in a rather sorry state, and his expression was one of extreme fury. Yun Luo Feng, are you a holy spirit or not? How could a holy spirit unleash such power? Nciheo was dumbfounded. He did not expect that Yun Luo Feng would force Huli to such an extent. Hee. Suddenly, Huli laughed coldly. He propped himself up on the arena and the aura around his body grew stronger and stronger. A storm spread out from his body and it was so powerful that it made people feel extremely oppressed. Yun Luo Feng, I have indeed underestimated you in the beginning. Now, I want to know if you will be able to receive this attack of mine. Not good. Mu Ran was shocked when he saw Huli's actions. Quick, stop him. Otherwise, the Yun girl will definitely not be able to withstand this attack. At the very least, she will be crippled. As soon as he finished speaking, his body shot towards Huli and Yun Luo Feng like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 1242. The surrounding crowd could feel the surging power from Huli's body. They were so suppressed that they couldn't even utter a word. They could only stare dumbfounded at the two people in the arena. Mu Ran's expression became increasingly anxious. Unfortunately, it was too late. Just as he was about to reach Huli, Huli's power exploded and swept towards Yun Luo Feng like a hurricane. Boom! A strong explosion resounded throughout the entire arena, so much so that the arena was blown into a pile of ruins. Mu Ran stopped in his tracks and stared in shock at the dust rising from the arena. A raging flame rose from his body and his bloodshot eyes turned towards Huli. Huli, do you know how to control your strength? This little girl is someone I've taken a fancy to. How dare you kill her? Huli was also dumbfounded. He had thought that Yun Luo Feng would be able to escape this calamity. Who would have thought that she would not be able to escape? How could this be? His original intention was not to kill this woman. He just did not want to lose to her. Miss Yun. Nciheo cried out anxiously. Two streams of tears flowed from the corners of his eyes. Miss, it's all our fault. We've dragged her down. In the beginning, if they hadn't offended Wang Mujing, Yun Luo Feng wouldn't have become enemies with Wang Mujing, Wang Yizhi wouldn't have made things difficult for her, and she wouldn't have beaten Wang Yizhi up in public. In this way, the following incident would not have happened. For a moment, feelings of self-blame and guilt filled Nziheo's heart, causing it to tremble. Ha ha ha. Wang Mujing laughed maniacally. His laughter was filled with madness. She's dead. She's finally dead. This woman has offended me. She won't have a good ending. When Nziheo heard Wang Mujing's laughter, his eyes became like a jackal's and a leopard's as he turned angrily towards Wang Mujing. Shut up. Wang Mujing sneered, little trash, who are you yelling at? Without Yun Luo Feng to support you, you're just a bunch of good-for-nothings. Ha ha ha. These words caused Nziheo's suppressed emotions to explode in an instant. He pounced towards Wang Mujing furiously and bit him on the shoulder. Ah! Wang Mujing screamed. Quick, help me chase this little bastard down. In an instant, the surrounding people rushed over to pull Nziheo away from Wang Mujing. However, Nziheo bit Wang Mujing's shoulder tightly and refused to let go. Little bastard. Wang Yizhi's eyes turned cold and he slapped his palm on Nziheo's shoulder. In an instant, Nziheo's body flew out like a kite with a broken string and crashed heavily into the crowd. At the same time, he tore off a piece of flesh from Wang Mujing's shoulder and blood kept flowing. Beat him. Beat this little bastard to death. Due to his relationship with Wang Yizhi, Wang Mujing was often followed by a group of followers. Now that they heard the angry words, those followers quickly rushed forward and punched and kicked Nziheo, who was lying on the ground. And Ziheo was in so much pain that he curled up into a ball, refusing to make a sound no matter what. Brother Ziheo. Tears welled up in the little Loli's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She pushed through the crowd, wanting to rush in front of Ziheo. Unexpectedly, a foot reached out from the side and tripped her. Little thing, you'd better behave yourself. Wang Mujing pressed on his bleeding shoulder and walked to the little Loli. He lifted her up and smiled sinisterly. And Ziheo is definitely going to die. Yun Luofeng is also dead. You'd better come with me. Chapter 1243. The little girl's face was filled with stubbornness. Her bright eyes were filled with resentment as she glared at Wang Mujing. You still dare to be stubborn. Slap. Wang Mujing raised his hand and slapped the little girl's face. In an instant, a blood-red mark appeared on the little girl's pink cheek. Even so, the little girl did not cry. Her bright eyes were fixed on Wang Mujing without fear. Young mistress. And Ziheo's heart ached. His hands clenched into fists as he felt powerless. He had caused Yun Luofeng's death. He was unable to protect young mistress. What was the point of a useless person like him living? At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the arena. No one paid any attention to Ziheo and the little girl. Even if they had paid attention, they would not have helped them in the arena. Smoke and dust scattered in all directions. Hu Li stared blankly at the ruins of the arena in front of him. He still could not believe that he had really killed that young girl. However, at this moment, the smoke and dust that had covered everyone's eyes gradually dissipated, revealing the scene above the ruins. They saw a beautiful young girl standing above the ruins. Her white robes were stained with dust and part of her sleeve had been torn off. The young girl's arm was bleeding and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. Her originally fair face was now somewhat dirty. The white cloth covering her eyes had also fallen off and floated in the breeze. In an instant, the crowd quietened down. Wang Mujing's maniacal laughter came to an abrupt halt. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief and stared in shock at the young girl standing above the ruins. She's not dead. This woman who should have died was actually still alive. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with intense hatred as he stared fixedly at Yun Luofeng. If looks could kill, Yun Luofeng's body would have been riddled with holes. So, you're still alive. Hu Li's heart finally calmed down. I knew that this move of mine would not be able to kill you. Yun Luofeng, you're very strong. I concede defeat. Admitted defeat. The crowd's eyes widened in shock. Hu Li, who was ranked 10th on the heaven list, admitted defeat. Remember your promise. Serve me loyally for 10 years. Yun Luofeng wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth. Her gaze slowly swept downwards, and she saw Ziheo, who was surrounded and beaten up by those people, and the little Loli, who had a clear 5-fingered mark on her face. Wang Mujing grabbed the little Loli's body and took a few steps back. Yun Luofeng, don't come over. If you come over, I'll kill her. Yun Luofeng acted as though he hadn't heard Wang Mujing's words and continued walking towards him. I'm not joking with you. If you dare to take another step forward, I will really kill her. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth. He saw that Yun Luofeng did not show any signs of stopping. He instantly took out a dagger and placed it on the little Loli's neck. Miss! And Ziheo's heart almost skipped a beat. His eyes were filled with anger and anxiety. Wang Mujing, stop. If you dare to touch Miss, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. The little Loli didn't have much of a reaction. She blinked her bright eyes and looked at Yun Luofeng without blinking. She was fine, that's great. If something really happened to her, Brother Zihao and I would definitely regret it for the rest of our lives. Yun Luo Feng, you forced me to do this. Chapter 1244. Wang Mujing gritted his teeth fiercely. He knew that Yun Luo Feng would not let him go. Since that was the case, he would make the first move. Thinking of this, he raised the dagger in his hand and stabbed it fiercely towards the little girl's chest. Just as the dagger was about to stab into her chest, a strong pressure came from the front, causing his fingers to stiffen. The dagger could no longer move forward. Instantly, his eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Yun Luo Feng with a pale face. At this moment, Yun Luo Feng had already walked in front of the little girl. His slender fingers gently stroked her delicate face as he lowered his gaze and asked, "Does it hurt?" The little girl shook her head and said in a childish voice, "It doesn't hurt. Compared to Brother Zihao, it doesn't hurt. Do you want to kill him?" Yun Luo Feng continued to ask. The little girl was stunned. She looked at the pale Wang Mujing behind her and nodded. "Yes, they bullied Brother Zihao. I want to kill them." Her voice was still immature, but it was filled with determination. "All right, I'll give you the sword. Go kill them." Yun Luo Feng handed the sword in his hand to the little girl. "Remember, don't show mercy to those who bully you." The little girl's hand trembled as she took the sword from Yun Luo Feng's hand. She turned around and stabbed the tip of the sword towards Wang Mujing's chest. "Jing-er!" Wang Yizhi shouted angrily. "Yun Luo Feng, you will get what you deserve. You will definitely get what you deserve." Pfft. As soon as Wang Yizhi finished speaking, the little girl's sword had already pierced Wang Mujing's chest. At this moment, she felt refreshed all over. It was something she had never felt before. So, killing an enemy would give her such a thrill. Wang Mujing's eyes widened as his body gradually fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with fear. Just now, he had wanted to dodge, but under Yun Luo Feng's pressure, he couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch as the sword, which emitted a cold light, entered his chest. Everyone in the arena was dumbfounded. No one had expected Yun Luo Feng to actually dare to kill someone on the spot. Those who are kind will be bullied by others. Yun Luo Feng acted as if he did not see those people's shocked gazes. He lowered his gaze and said, "If you don't want to be bullied by others, you have to become strong." Kind people get bullied. The little girl nodded her head sensibly. "From now on, I won't be bullied anymore. I have to protect myself and Brother Zihao." And Zihao was only her bodyguard, but he had accompanied her for many years. In her heart, he was already like family. Hearing the little loli's tender voice, and Zihao's emotions became somewhat complicated. In his heart, his young miss had always been naive and innocent. He would never let her worry about her livelihood, let alone let her come into contact with the evils of the human heart. No matter how hard and tired he was, he would not let her suffer in the slightest. Now that he thought about it, was his way of thinking all along wrong? What if one day he left the young miss forever? How would the young miss, who had no ability to survive on the mainland? Sigh. Mu Ran smiled bitterly. This girl's temper is as fierce as what Chen Yuqing said. She is not willing to suffer any losses. But now, she's actually teaching a little girl how to kill people. Ji Yan said with some schadenfreude. "Mu Ran, I won't fight with you over this girl. With her personality, she will definitely attract a lot of trouble. It's better for you to follow behind her and clean up." "Oh, that's right, you have to help her solve the current situation first." Chapter 1245. Just as he finished speaking, a stern voice rang out from outside the noisy crowd. "Get out of the way, everyone get out of the way." After hearing this voice, everyone subconsciously opened up a path. allowing the armored people behind them to pass. Among those people, the leader was a middle-aged man with a serious expression. He slowly walked in front of Yun Luofeng and said expressionlessly, "Yun Luofeng, you are extremely audacious. You dare to kill someone in public. Immediately, we will go to the penal court to be punished." "Wait." Hu Li leaped and landed in front of Yun Luofeng when she saw that the people were about to take Yun Luofeng away. Yun Luofeng has already entered the Heaven List and is a disciple of the Heaven List. How dare the Stewards Hall capture her? Once she entered the Heaven List, her status would change greatly. Even the Stewards Hall leader would not be able to touch her. "Lord Tianyu, you have to uphold justice for my nephew." Wang Yizhi reacted and quickly rushed to Meng Tianyu's feet. He said tearfully, "My nephew died unjustly. You have to uphold justice for us." Meng Tianyu's eyes darkened and he sneered at Yun Luofeng, "So what if she defeated you? The Stewards Hall has the right to take her back. Even if we don't have the right to punish her, we can hand her over to the elders." "Are you trying to say that a disciple of the Heaven List has more power than an elder? Furthermore, our academy has not recognized her as a disciple of the Heaven List." This meant that the academy had not recognized her and she was not a disciple of the Heaven List. The Stewards Hall had the right to take her back. Hu Li narrowed her eyes and sneered as she stood in front of Yun Luofeng. "It doesn't matter if you don't recognize her. I've been in the Heaven List for 3 to 5 years. I don't know if I have the right to make you go back based on my status." Meng Tianyu's eyes darkened. "Hu Li, do you really want to make an enemy of the Stewards Hall?" "Make an enemy?" Hu Li smiled and said sarcastically, "Are you even worthy?" In an instant, Meng Tianyu's expression changed. Just as he was about to speak, Mu Ran was already standing next to Yun Luofeng. "Meng Tianyu, this Yun Luofeng is already a member of our Morning Hall. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for your Stewards Hall to capture a disciple of our Morning Hall." Mu Ran wore a faint smile on her face as she looked at Meng Tianyu with an indifferent gaze. Meng Tianyu's face darkened once more. Not only did Hu Li protect a mere Yun Luofeng, but even the Hall Master of the Morning Hall was biased towards her. "Hu Li, Hall Master Mu Ran, I will go back and report to our Hall Master. Then, he will make a decision. Let's go." Meng Tianyu waved his hand and led a group of people from the Stewards Hall away. After Mu Ran saw Meng Tianyu leave, he retracted his gaze and smiled bitterly at Yun Luofeng. "Did you really have to kill him on the spot? Can't you just bear with it?" "No." Yun Luofeng's words silenced Mu Ran. He shook his head helplessly, and the smile on his face became even more bitter. "Moreover, he was the one who attacked first, threatening me with Aureliai's life. Arale. This name is really strange." Mu Ran was stunned for a moment, and his face was filled with speechlessness. The little loli was also stunned. She weakly explained, "My name is not Arale. My name is Ji Fei. And Zihao, take her back first and let her recuperate from her injuries. Leave the rest to me." Yun Luofeng glanced at the little loli, then turned to Zihao and spoke. Zihao crawled up from the ground, his face filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Miss Yun. We've dragged you down again." Chapter 1246. "Brother Zihao, let's go." The little girl pursed her lips slightly and looked at Yun Luofeng with her big bright eyes. "I will remember your words. In the future, I will not continue to be so weak." She looked at Yun Luofeng one last time, turned around and supported Zihao as they walked out, gradually disappearing from her sight. "Do you need any help?" Mu Ran looked at Yun Luofeng and asked with a bitter smile. "No need." Yun Luofeng gently stroked his chin as a dangerous light flashed across his slightly narrowed eyes. "I can handle it myself." The elders in the academy were divided into 2 factions. Similarly, the elder's office was also divided into the east and the west. The elder's office, where Su Kong and the others were, was in the east. At this moment, a panicked figure appeared outside the elder's office. When he saw the people guarding the door, he ran over and said while panting, quickly inform the elders, something has happened. Steward Jean, the elders are busy and have given the order that they will not see anyone who comes to disturb them. The guard at the door frowned slightly and refused the old man's request. The old man wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hurry up and inform the elders. Otherwise, it will really be too late. Tell the elders that something has happened to Miss Yun. When the guard saw the old man's panicked look, he thought for a moment and said, I will inform the elders, but whether they are willing to see you or not is not something I can decide. The atmosphere in the elders' office was very strict. Many elders sat upright, their faces filled with helplessness and worry. The people from the Continent Lord's mansion have just given the order for everyone above the Holy Spirit stage to encircle and kill the Ghost Emperor. Su Kong rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. It is said that those who had gone before were all killed by the Ghost Emperor. Ling Hai's expression was very ugly. We have been busy with that matter recently, yet there are still people who think that we are not free enough. Furthermore, we do not even know the Ghost Emperor's strength and yet we are sending ourselves to their doorstep. Isn't that courting death? Those old fellows in the West Elder Hall have already agreed. Now, only we are left. Void, I think it's best if we don't get involved in this mess. Shuang frowned slightly as she tapped her finger on the table. After all, this Ghost Emperor managed to escape from the pursuit of so many people. He even grew to his current state. His fear is definitely beyond imagination. It would be great if the headmaster came back. Unfortunately, the headmaster has been gone for so many years, and there is still no news of his whereabouts. The expressions of the elders grew more and more worried. During the time that the headmaster wasn't around, there wasn't even a person in charge. Elders. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the door, causing Su Kong and the others to frown. Didn't you say that you're not allowed to disturb us if there's nothing wrong? Who allowed you to come in? Su Kong's face darkened as he scolded sternly. A layer of cold sweat appeared on the guard's forehead. Elders, Butler Jean is here to seek an audience. He said that Miss Yun is in danger. What? With a loud bang, Ling Hai smashed his fist on the table. He stood up angrily. My precious disciple is in danger. Who has the guts to lay a hand on my disciple? Let Manager Jean in immediately. Yes, sir. After he finished speaking, the guard retreated. Not long after, the old man hurriedly rushed in from the door. In an instant, the gazes of the 5 elders all landed on the old man. Chapter 1247. What happened? Su Kong's expression darkened. What danger did Feng Er encounter? The old man looked at the 5 elders carefully. Elders, Miss Yun returned not long ago. However, Wang Yizhi deliberately made things difficult for Miss Yun in order to avenge his nephew. Wang Yizhi. That bastard again. Ling Hai's eyes were filled with anger. Why did Wang Yizhi have the chance to cause trouble for my precious disciple? Didn't I arrange for Wang Yizhi to go somewhere else? This. The old man wiped his sweat and continued, I don't know what happened either. The hall that Wang Yizhi brought is where Miss Yun is. He is certain that Miss Yun did not apply for leave and wants to expel her from the academy. If Miss Yun does not want to leave, she must endure 100 lashes from him. Ling Hai clenched his fists tightly as he gritted his teeth. Wang Yizhi, who gave him the guts to hit my disciple? Shuang and the others stood up anxiously. How is Miss Yun? Did Wang Yizhi injure her? Wang Yizhi injured Yun Luofeng. The old man laughed bitterly when he heard this. Yun Luofeng was a Holy Spirit practitioner. How could Wang Yizhi possibly injure her? Elders, don't worry. Miss Yun is not injured. Instead, she injured Wang Yizhi. Hearing this, Shuang heaved a sigh of relief. She rubbed her chest and slowly exhaled. It's good that she's not injured. I was almost scared to death. Wang Yizhi, that bastard, is really audacious. I'll settle the score with him later. What's next? Su Kong continued to ask. Wang Yizhi reported Miss Yun to the steward's hall. The people from the steward's hall wanted to punish Miss Yun. It was Hall Master Mu Ran who spoke up for Miss Yun. However, the people from the steward's hall thought that Miss Yun was at fault. In the end, they came to an agreement. If Miss Yun can make it to the earth roll within 5 days, they'll let her go. What? Ling Hai, who had just sat down and had yet to take a sip of tea to calm himself down, slammed the table and stood up when he heard this. Make it to the earth roll within 5 days. My disciple is quite talented. Unfortunately, she hasn't started cultivating yet. Aren't they forcing her? By the way, you said my disciple injured Wang Yizhi. As far as I know, Wang Yizhi is a venerable spiritualist. How did my disciple injure him? The old man wiped his sweat again. Miss Yun has already made it to the earth roll. Puff! Su Kong had just taken a sip of tea when he spat it out because of these words. Emptiness, who was sitting opposite him, was more unlucky. He was sprayed all over his face and his face was filled with resentment. Did you just say that the Yun girl has charged up the earth roll? Shuang was stunned as she asked in disbelief. The old man nodded. She made it to the earth roll, but the person she defeated was Hu Lin, the brother of the heaven rolls Hu Li. Su Kong narrowed his eyes. Did Hu Li take revenge for his brother and injure my disciple? He would never let off anyone who hurt his disciple. No. The old man shook his head and said, Hu Li challenged Miss Yun to a fight, but in the end, he admitted defeat. Admit defeat, the elders looked at each other, and the shock in their eyes deepened. Hu Li fought with Yun Luofeng but admitted defeat. Could it be that Yun Luofeng was stronger than Hu Li? Steward Jean, hurry up and tell us what happened. Shuang frowned and continued to ask. Chapter 1248. Who was it that dared to touch our disciple? A cold light flashed across Shui Ying's eyes and her voice was extremely cold. Elder Shuang, Yun Luofeng has 2 friends in the academy. Wang Mujing thought that Yun Luofeng had died in Hu Li's hands, so she injured Yun Luofeng's friend. Yun Luofeng wanted to settle the score with Wang Mujing, but who knew that Wang Mujing would capture her friend and use her friend's life to threaten him, so, the old man didn't say anything else, but the 5 elders understood what had happened. Humph. Ling Hai scoffed, Wang Mujing was courting death, she can't blame anyone else. My disciple did not do anything wrong. Could it be that the people from the duty hall are going to settle the score with my disciple? That's right. The elder nodded, the people from the duty hall are going to pursue the matter. That's not right, Shuang frowned slightly, my disciple defeated Hu Li and was able to enter the heaven list. Why would the people from the duty hall have the guts to look for her? The elder looked at the elders carefully. The people from the duty hall said that the academy will not recognize Miss Yun's identity. Ha ha ha. Ling Hai laughed maniacally, since when did the duty hall have the right to make decisions in the academy? How dare they bully my disciple, I will make them pay the price. Boom. Ling Hai punched the wall, creating a huge hole in it. Immediately after, his figure rushed out of the hole. Let's go too. Shui Ying's beautiful eyes darkened, after all, I'm not dead yet and someone dares to bully me. These people from the duty hall are too much. Just as the elder went to call for reinforcements, the people from the duty hall found Yun Luo Feng again. This time, it was the leader of the duty hall, Zhuo Wen. Perhaps it was because of Mu Ran and Hu Li, but they did not forcefully escort Yun Luo Feng. Instead, they invited her over. When Hu Li and Mu Ran received the news, Yun Luo Feng had already left with the people from the duty hall. At this moment, in the penal hall that was filled with torture devices, Zhuo Wen sat high up on a black wooden chair. His expression was stern as he looked at the young girl below and said in a cold voice, "Yun Luo Feng, do you know your crimes?" The girl's demonic aura was awe-inspiring as a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Her body was languid and evil as she lifted her eyes to look at Zhuo Wen. "Your steward's hall invited me here as a guest. Is this the attitude of a guest? Not even a chair?" Zhuo Wen's eyes sank, and he said in a cold voice, "Yun Luo Feng, what kind of place do you take my duty hall to be? Let me tell you, today, you can only live if I want you to live. If I want you to die, you must die." Yun Luo Feng lazily raised the corner of his lips. "How many gifts did Wang Yizhi give you?" Zhuo Wen was stunned. His face was filled with anger as if someone had seen through him. He shouted, "Yun Luo Feng, my duty hall has always been impartial. Let alone the fact that you're not a disciple of the heavenly role, even if you're in the heavenly role, as long as you make a mistake, I have the right to punish you." The academy was a place that focused on geniuses. Therefore, as long as one entered the heaven ranking, his authority would be higher than the hall masters of the various halls. But there was one exception, that was, the academy was not allowed to kill fellow students, even if they were geniuses on the heaven roll. If a genius on the heaven roll made a mistake, the duty hall also had the right to punish them. Someone, drag Yun Luo Feng away and punish him severely with a branding iron. Yes. After Zhuo Wen's words fell, two people immediately stepped forward and tried to stop Yun Luo Feng's body. However, before the two of them could touch Yun Luo Feng, there was a bang. A wave of energy surged out of her body and forced the two of them back a few steps. Chapter 1249. Get lost. The girl's thin lips parted slightly, her evil eyes sweeping over the two people she had pushed back. Her beautiful face was cold. "Yun Luo Feng." Zhuo Wen stood up angrily. "Did you think I invited you here just to be a guest? I just tricked you into coming to the criminal court. When you get here, you won't be able to call for help. No one can save you." Yun Luo Feng raised her hand and pulled the iron torture chair to her side. She flicked her sleeves and sat down. She propped her head up with the back of her hand and looked at Zhuo Wen with a faint smile. "Then do you think you can punish me?" Lazy, evil, cold, domineering, these four words could not be more suitable to describe the young girl today. Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed with anger. He slammed his palm on the table and stood up angrily. "Yun Luo Feng, I'll show you now if I can punish you." In an instant, the power in Zhuo Wen's body surged and he quickly rushed towards Yun Luo Feng. "Stop!" Mu Ran hurriedly rushed in from outside. When he saw Zhuo Wen attack Yun Luo Feng, his old face immediately became furious. His figure flashed and he quickly rushed in front of Yun Luo Feng, raising his hand to block Mu Ran's attack. Boom! The two palms collided and Zhuo Wen took a few steps back. His expression darkened and became hazy. "Mu Ran, I advise you to mind your own business." Ha! Mu Ran sneered and flicked his sleeves, standing in front of Yun Luo Feng. "Then I'm really going to mind my own business." Zhuo Wen sneered, "So you're going to protect the woman who committed the murder?" Although it was the little lowly who killed Wang Mujing, it was Yun Luo Feng who ordered it. Wang Yizhi also put all the blame on Yun Luo Feng. As for the little lowly, as long as Yun Luo Feng was dead, wouldn't she be at his mercy? Zhuo Wen, if Wang Mujing hadn't wanted to kill him first, he wouldn't have been killed. Everything has a cause and effect. Why do you put the blame on the Yun girl? Mu Ran flicked his sleeves, looking like a sage. In my opinion, let's just forget about this. The Yun girl didn't do anything wrong. Humph. Zhuo Wen's eyes were gloomy. If I don't punish her, and word gets out, people will think that our West Continent Academy has no rules. A life for a life, no matter if she's on the heaven roll or earth roll. Since you said that a murderer should pay with his life, and Wang Mujing was the one who attacked first, is he not at fault? Mu Ran furrowed his brows and felt a little angry in his heart. You said Wang Mujing made the first move. Zhuo Wen sneered. Then is she dead? She and that little girl didn't die, so what right does she have to kill Wang Mujing? Mu Ran took a deep breath. He decided not to waste any more words with Zhuo Wen. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng. Yun girl, leave this place first. I'll take care of this for you. Yun Luofeng smiled devilishly and stood up lazily from her chair. Her lips curled into an angle as she looked at Zhuo Wen with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Muran, he wants to kill you. Mu Ran was stunned and looked at Yun Luofeng in confusion. He wanted to kill Zhuo Wen. What was going on? Since when did he want to kill him? Yun Luofeng continued to smile and said, he wanted to kill you a long time ago. You, Mu Ran. Zhuo Ran flew into a rage and turned to Mu Ran angrily. You actually want to kill me? Then I'll kill you first. Let's see how you're going to kill me. Chapter 1250. Mu Ran was dumbfounded. Could he say that he was innocent? But Yun Luofeng did not give Mu Ran the chance to speak. She shrugged and continued, what you're doing is a little inhumane. Mu Ran only wanted to kill you. He didn't actually kill you. I think it's better for you to make peace. Yun Luofeng spoke with sincerity. No one could see any lies on her face. Make peace. Dream on. How could I give him a chance to kill me? Zhuo Wen gritted his teeth. Mu Ran, you wanted to kill me. Even if the elders of the college stop me, I must kill you today. Yun Luofeng laughed. Her laughter was exceptionally clear in the quiet penal court. I was just joking just now, but... She paused, her eyes turning slightly. You also know that if someone wants to kill you, you have to strike first and not give them any chance to make a move. Why is it that when it comes to others, it changes? Zhuo Wen's expression abruptly changed. Only now did he realize that Yun Luofeng had set a trap for him. Yun Luofeng. He roared and rushed towards Yun Luofeng again. Murderous intent surged from his body as if he wanted to kill the girl with one blow. Wang Yizhi appeared out of nowhere. His venomous eyes stared at Yun Luofeng, who was suffering from Zhuo Wen's attack. There was a cold light in the corners of his eyes. Yun Luofeng, you killed my nephew. If I don't avenge him, I am not a man. Yun Luofeng looked coldly at Zhuo Wen, who was closing in on her. Her expression did not change. Her beautiful face still had an evil smile. Stop. Boom. In an instant, an angry roar suddenly sounded. It was like a drumstick hitting Zhuo Wen's chest. In an instant, his body was thrown into the air. Fresh blood flowed out of his mouth. He raised his terrified eyes and looked at the group of elders who were striding in from outside the door. His face turned from pale white to astonishment, and his eyes were filled with deep astonishment. Elder Su Kong, Elder Ling Hai. You. Why are you here? Zhuo Wen didn't know what was going on when he saw these people charging at him furiously. His mind buzzed, and he didn't understand how he had offended these elders. Ling Hai dashed forward and kicked Zhuo Wen, who had just crawled up, into the air. His face was very ugly and his anger was overflowing. Zwo1, how dare you? Who allowed you to set up a private punishment in the steward's hall? Especially, he even dared to lay his hands on a weak girl. Zwo1 was dumbfounded. He was just punishing a disciple. How did he attract these old fellows? Could it be that Huli went to invite them? Furthermore, the weak girl that Elder Ling Hai spoke of, was she really Yun Luofeng? If this woman was a weak woman, then there wouldn't be any evil women in this world. Thinking of this, Zwo1 took a deep breath. He suppressed the panic in his heart and explained, "Elders, listen to me. What Huli said is only his side of the story. Don't believe him. This woman dared to commit murder in public. She has committed a heinous crime and should be punished with death. Therefore, I am only punishing her according to the rules of the academy. Elders, you will definitely investigate this matter and decide who is right and who is wrong. You won't be blinded by some treacherous people." The treacherous people that he spoke of were people like Yun Luofeng. Chapter 1251. Ling Hai laughed out loud. His laughter was filled with anger. "Zwo1. You still dare to shirk responsibility at a time like this?" He gritted his teeth and glared at Zwo1. "You should quit your job as the hall master of the steward hall. Pack up the shop and get lost." Zwo1's mind was blown. He didn't understand why Ling Hai wanted him to get lost. Just because he took care of Yun Luofeng. Elder Ling Hai, Zwo1 wanted to continue defending himself, but he saw that the elders were already walking towards Yun Luofeng. "My precious disciple, are you hurt? Don't worry, I will definitely get revenge for you." When Ling Hai said this, he turned around and glared at Zwo1. Rumble. Zwo1 felt as if his brain had been struck by lightning. His face was full of shock. Yun Luofeng was Ling Hai's disciple. Was this a joke? How could this be? But what shocked Zwo1 even more was that Ling Hai's concern for him made the other elders look at Yun Luofeng nervously. "Feng, did Zwo1 hurt you? If he hurt you, the 5 of us will definitely not let him leave. You are our disciple, but you were bullied when we weren't paying attention, and you were even brought to the penal hall. If we don't get revenge for you, if word gets out, where will the 5 of us put our faces?" The more the 5 elders spoke, the angrier they became. All of their sharp gazes shot towards Zwo1. Zwo1 was completely dumbfounded. He originally thought that Yun Luofeng was at most Ling Hai's disciple, but according to the current situation, the 5 elders were all his masters. Oh my God, he had offended all the elders of the East Courtyard. Wang Yizhi took 2 steps back, his face extremely pale. He turned around and wanted to escape, but at this moment, a nightmarish voice made his body freeze. "Where do you think you're going?" Su Kong was expressionless as he looked coldly at Wang Yizhi. Wang Yizhi wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled awkwardly at Su Kong. "Elder Su Kong, this matter has nothing to do with me. It was all my nephew's fault. Please let me go this time. If I knew that Yun Luofeng was your disciple, I wouldn't dare to do it even if I had 100 guts." "Let you go?" Void sneered, "You made such a big mistake, why should I let you go? From tomorrow onwards, I'll let Steward Jean take over the steward's hall. Your crimes will be judged by him." Thump. Wang Yizhi's legs went soft, and he fell heavily to the ground. He knew that he had no way out this time. "Elder Void," Zwo1 gritted his teeth, "you want to remove me from my position, do the elders of the West Courtyard agree?" Void looked at him coldly, "Can't you just hand over your resignation?" "Why is Elder Su Kong so sure that I will hand in my resignation letter?" Zwo1 clenched his fists tightly. If he left the academy, he would not have a better future. Therefore, he would definitely not be willing to hand in his resignation letter. Void raised his eyebrows. Hand in your resignation letter yourself. Or, from tomorrow onwards, the world will know that you died of a heart attack. Two paths, choose for yourself. Suo Wen's body swayed a few times, and finally fell to the ground. His face was extremely pale, and his eyes were filled with despair as he stared deeply at the elders in front of him. Ling Hai rubbed his nose. For the first time, he realized that Void was so black-bellied. If Suo Wen wanted to live, he could only hand in his resignation letter. Otherwise, he wouldn't mind killing him. Chapter 1252. Tomorrow, I will hand in my resignation. After saying these words, Suo Wen felt all the strength in his body disappear and he lay on the ground weakly. Why didn't you do this earlier? Shui Ying's beautiful eyes swept past Suo Wen's body and landed on Yun Luofeng. She smiled and said, Yun girl, we will take care of this matter. You have also suffered a lot of shock. Go back and have a good rest. Yun Luofeng nodded. She took one last look at the elders, turned around and walked out. To be honest, the reason why Yun Luofeng came to the penal hall was because she had the ability to protect herself. However, the appearance of the elders still touched her heart. Hu Li stood at the door. He had arrived late but he had seen everything that had just happened. Hence, when he saw Yun Luofeng walking towards his door, he laughed involuntarily. Yun Luofeng, I didn't think that you would be the disciple of the Academy's elders. No wonder you dare to be so arrogant. Yun Luofeng stopped in her tracks. Even without the masters, no one can stop me from killing someone if I want to. Isn't the purpose of a person's life to seek revenge? How could she suppress herself? Hu Li smiled. I realize that I am becoming more and more interested in you. Perhaps I won't be too bored following you for the next 10 years. In the beginning, Hu Li felt sad that he had sold himself for 10 years. But now, he realized that if he stayed by Yun Luofeng's side, his days in the future would be very exciting. At this moment, the elders of the West Courtyard were investigating the murderer because of Yao Mingqi's incident. When they came back to their senses, the steward's hall had already changed owners. They wanted to settle the score later but everything was already a foregone conclusion. They could only swallow their anger. Suo Wen of the steward's hall was personally trained by Yao Shu. Now that he was chased out of the academy and Steward Jean was promoted, how could he not be angry? Hence, his hatred towards the East Courtyard grew stronger and stronger. Before returning home, Yun Luofeng purposely changed her clothes and healed the injuries on her body. Even so, when Yun Xiao saw her for the first time, his breathing suddenly tightened. You're injured. Yun Luofeng was startled. She had already healed most of her injuries but the man before her eyes could still see through her. I just fought with someone. It's nothing serious. Yun Luofeng raised the corners of her lips and slowly walked towards Yun Xiao. She reached out and gently wrapped her arms around the man in front of her, burying her head in his chest. Yun Xiao, let's have a baby. Children. Those two words caused the light in Yun Xiao's eyes to gradually soften. He raised his hands and hugged the young girl tightly. After a while, he finally reacted and furrowed his brows. Don't change the subject. Tell me, who hurt you? Murderous intent surged from his body, and a cold aura arose spontaneously. Yun Luofeng believed that if he said Hu Li's name, he would definitely rush to the Western Continent Academy and tear that fox-like man into pieces. I'm fine now. Don't worry. I didn't lose this battle. Yun Xiao's eyes stared intently at Yun Luofeng. I know that you want to rely on your own strength to fight, but when the time is right, you can rely on me. My power exists to protect you. I do not wish for you to suffer any injuries. All right. Yun Luofeng lifted her head and kissed the man's lips. Suddenly, she seemed to have discovered something and slightly narrowed her eyes. Did someone come today? Chapter 1253. Yun Luofeng has always been very sensitive to smells. Hence, the faintly discernible fragrance wafting out from the courtyard caused a cold glint to flash across Yun Luofeng's eyes. Yun Xiao nodded honestly. A woman sneaked into our house and secretly ate the pastries I made. However, I've already made her spit them out and crippled her. Perhaps she was afraid that Yun Luofeng would be angry, Yun Xiao hurriedly explained. I didn't let her dirty our territory. The corners of Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile as he narrowed his eyes. Looks like I can't leave your side in the future. Otherwise, who knows how many women will want to seduce you? They can't. In this world, the only person who can get close to him is Yun Luofeng. Yun Xiao's eyes darkened and a light flashed across his grim eyes. However, no one knew what he was thinking. The next day, after Yun Luofeng had breakfast, she headed to the academy. Yun Xiao stood at the doorway as he watched her leave, his deep and serene eyes unable to see the bottom. Yun Xiao, are you thinking of going to the academy to find master? Little Mo had unknowingly walked up from behind him. Her large, bright eyes blinked slightly as she looked at Yun Xiao curiously. Yun Xiao's gaze became even colder. I'm worried about her. Little Mo blinked. It's already past the registration period. You can't go to the academy even if you want to. As if she had not heard Little Mo's words, Yun Xiao strode out. After a long while, a grim voice rang in Little Mo's ears. Follow me. Little Mo curled her lips and hurriedly chased after Yun Xiao, disappearing under the bright sunlight. As Yun Luofeng had defeated Hu Li of the Heaven Roll, he had successfully entered the Heaven Roll. As a disciple of the Heaven Roll, he did not need to attend classes and only needed to stay in the cultivation room to cultivate every day. At this moment, Yun Luofeng had just sat down in his room and had not even had time to cultivate when a clamor sounded from outside the door. What's going on? She stood up from the mat and walked towards the door. The moment she opened the door, she saw a fair-skinned and handsome young man standing in front of her door. As soon as he saw her, he got straight to the point and said, Yun Luofeng, I saw your battle with Hu Li yesterday, so I came to look for you. You also want to challenge me? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and looked at the youth's handsome face. The young man blushed. No, I'm not here to challenge you. I'm here to confess to you. Farewell. Yun Luofeng was stunned for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly. I'm not interested. After saying that, she was about to close the door. Wait. The young man hurried forward and extended his hand to stop Yun Luofeng from closing the door. His face was filled with sincerity. After watching your battle yesterday, I realized that you're the most domineering woman I've ever seen. Especially the scene of you dealing with Wang Mujing, it made me very excited. Yun Luofeng, you can give me a chance. Do you want to scram yourself, or do you want me to help you? Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows, his domineering eyes sweeping over the young man's blushing face. The young man wanted to continue speaking, but at this moment, an enchanting voice rang out from behind him. Yuzija, you already have a fiancé and you still want to pester Yun Luofeng? Hu Li waved his fan and walked over with a face full of smiles. He slowly walked to Yun Luofeng's side and winked at her. Even if Yun Luofeng accepts me, he'll never accept you. Chapter 1254. Yuzija's expression was a little awkward. My fiancé has nothing to do with me. It was decided by my parents, but I have the right to pursue my true love. You know him. Yun Luofeng ignored Yuzija and turned to look at Hu Li, the person ranked first on the Earth list. Hu Li said in a low voice. He's only half a step away from becoming a holy king. As for his fiancée. He paused, then continued, she's ranked second on the Earth list. Although both of them are on the Earth list, their families are very powerful in the Western continent. Oh. Yun Luofeng raised his eyebrows and turned to enter the room. You know him. You deal with him for me. Hu Li's mouth twitched. As a little follower, he had to deal with his master's suitor. Cough cough. Hu Li coughed dryly. Yuzija, you should go back. Don't bother her. Don't forget, you already have a fiancé. Yuzija looked at Yun Luofeng who had entered the room and sighed softly. He turned around and left with a helpless expression. But this would not make him give up. No matter what, he would move Yun Luofeng. Early in the morning, because of Yuzija's actions, Yun Luofeng was once again embroiled in rumors. The entire academy was saying that she had taken a fancy to Yuzija's family. That was why she had seduced Yuzija and snatched his fiancé away. A woman like this, no matter how talented she was still disdainful. At this moment, Yun Luofeng's cultivation room was surrounded by a group of women. The leader of those people was a beautiful woman. At this moment, she had her hands on her hips and was glaring angrily. Yun Luofeng, don't think that you're great just because you entered the heaven list. Wasn't that because Hu Li let you go? But it's not enough that you seduced Hu Li. You even dared to seduce my fiancé. Get out here immediately. That's right. In her eyes, the person who had lost that battle might not have been Hu Li. If Hu Li had not let her go, she might have been beaten to the ground. Scram! The door to the room was blown open by a gust of wind, and a force shot out from within. Even though he quickly used his sleeves to block it, he was still pushed back a few steps by this force. The anger in her chest became even more intense. Yun Luofeng, isn't it enough that you have Hu Li? Why don't you let my fiancé go as well? I know, Hu Li's family can't compare to my fiancé's, so you want to capture these two men in your hands. How can there be such a cheap woman like you in this world? Bang! The door was opened once again, and a girl in snow-white clothes strode out. For some reason, the moment the woman saw the white-robed girl, she felt her breathing tighten, as if a rock was pressing down on her body. Yuzija's fiancé. The young girl lifted her chin slightly, looking down at the group of people in front of her. Her eyes were filled with arrogance, and her deep black eyes were filled with dominance. Go back and tell Yuzija not to bother me. People like him. I don't like them. The woman's expression changed drastically. If she said that she didn't like her fiancé, wouldn't that be insulting her? Yun Luofeng, who do you think you are? Is the heaven list that amazing? Let me tell you, as long as I want to enter the heaven list, I can beat you down at any time. You actually dare to look down on my fiancé. Chapter 1255. Senior sister Zhuiyun is right. Senior brother Yu is already outstanding enough. How dare you look down on him? He's the only one who looks down on you. You have no right to be picky. Is it reasonable for you to seduce someone else's fiancé? The group of women behind Zhuiyun spoke up one after another. They all glared angrily at Yun Luofeng. Clearly, in their eyes, Yun Luofeng was an unforgivable evil. Zhuiyun. Yuzija, who had rushed over after hearing the news, saw Zhuiyun standing in front of Yun Luofeng. His expression changed drastically. He hurried forward and said angrily, "What are you doing here? This has nothing to do with Miss Yun. I'm the one who has taken a fancy to her." Zhuiyun's eyes reddened when she saw Yuzija's protection of Yun Luofeng. She felt so wrong that tears were about to fall. What's so good about this woman? Why are you protecting her? Shut up. Yuzhisha raised his hand and slapped Shuiyun harshly. Shuiyun was stunned by this slap. She raised her head in disbelief and stared at Yuzhisha. As if she hadn't expected that he would ruthlessly slap her because of Yun Luofeng. You hit me. Shuiyun touched her flushed face as tears fell from her eyes. Yuzhisha did not look at Shuiyun. He turned to look at Yun Luofeng. Miss Yun, this is my fault. I apologize to you. I never thought that Shuiyun would cause trouble for you. Believe me, this will not happen again. Yun Luofeng's lips curled. A dangerous arc flashed across her narrowed eyes. Next time. Do you think there will be a next time? Yun Luofeng looked at Yuzhisha and asked, Yuzhisha, I don't believe that you will fall in love with me because of my battle with Huli. Tell me, what is your motive? Yuzhisha's expression froze. A trace of panic surfaced in his eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. He smiled and said, Miss Yun, what are you talking about? Why don't I understand? I do have feelings for Miss Yun. I have no other intentions. Furthermore, it's understandable that you won't accept me. However, I have confidence in myself. Mother. Just as Yuzhisha was about to continue expressing his feelings, a soft voice came from behind him. When Yun Luofeng heard this voice, her body suddenly stiffened. She raised her head, and when her dark eyes saw the two people, one big and one small, slowly walking over, the coldness on her face gradually dissipated. The man's black robe fluttered in the wind. He was cold and murderous, and his handsome face was expressionless as if he had facial paralysis. Just by standing in front of this man, one would be instantly crushed by his powerful aura. However, everyone's gaze slowly landed on the little boy beside the man, who looked like he was carved out of jade. The little boy looked to be about 5 or 6 years old. He was exceptionally cute, and his big, bright eyes were like stars, shining with a dazzling light. When he saw Yun Luofeng, a brilliant smile broke out on his face. He opened his arms wide and rushed into Yun Luofeng's embrace. This time, Yun Shao did not stop him. His gaze was fixated on the young girl's peerlessly beautiful face from beginning to end as his figure was reflected in his black pupils. Mother. This little boy was addressing Yun Luofeng as mother. Mother, you left father and me at home. Father and I are very lonely, so we came to find you. Xiao Mo's eyes flickered a few times. She looked at the stiff-faced Yuzhisha with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Who is this fellow? Is he another fly that has been circling around you? Chapter 1256. Aside from Yun Shao, all the other men around Yun Luofeng were like flies to little Amo. Why are you here? Yun Luofeng held little Amo in his arms as he looked at Yun Shao. His lips curled into a smile. Little Amo wanted to follow you, so I brought him here. Little Amo rolled his eyes in his heart when he heard Yun Zhao's words. Yun Shao was obviously the one who wanted to find Yun Luofeng, yet she had pushed him out. However, little Amo did not expose Yun Luofeng. He smiled and said, I missed my mother, so I asked my father to bring me to find you. Over the past few years, little Amo had been calling her mother more and more smoothly. He had even used this method to chase away many of Yun Luofeng's pursuers. After all, no matter how outstanding those people were, they could not compare to Yun Shao. Cough cough. Yuzhisha coughed dryly and said awkwardly, Miss Yun, so you thought you were married? Yun Luofeng raised his brows and swept his cold gaze towards Yuzhisha. I don't care what your motives are. If you plan to hurt me or the people around me, I will not let you off. From the moment Yuzhisha had appeared, she knew that this man was not simply pursuing her. There was a secret in his heart that could not be divulged. Yuzhisha's expression became even more awkward. He did not say another word and hurriedly left. Yuzija. Shuiyun stomped her foot and was about to chase after him when a cold voice suddenly rang out from behind her. Who allowed you to leave? Shuiyun's body stiffened. She turned around and gritted her teeth. This is the West Continent College, what do you want? You humiliated him with your words, so there's no need for you to keep your tongue. Ah! Shuiyun had just screamed when a force entered her mouth. She felt a sharp pain on her tongue and blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Get lost. The man waved his sleeves in a cold and domineering manner. The moment he waved his sleeves, a shockwave spread out and sent those who were blocking Yun Luofeng's path flying. Yun Luofeng. Hu Li walked over from behind the crowd. Just as he was about to raise his hand to pat Yun Luofeng's shoulder, he came into contact with the man's cold and stern eyes. He was so frightened that he quickly withdrew his hand. I didn't expect that you're already married. Fortunately, I found out early. Otherwise, what if I fall in love with you after getting to know you better? Ha! Yun Luofeng knew that Hu Li was joking, so he did not take it to heart. On the contrary, Yun Zhao's cold eyes swept over him, and his grim black eyes were mixed with a warning. You won't have the chance to interact with her. Hu Li chuckled, that's not necessarily true. I'm going to follow her for 10 years. In these 10 years, I'm going to get to know her better. 10 years. Yun Zhao frowned and his gaze fell on Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng shrugged. He was the one who fought with me before. He lost to me, so he has to serve me for 10 years. Oh. Yun Zhao's eyes filled with killing intent once again turned towards Hu Li. The person who injured you was him. Hu Li's heart trembled when he came into contact with the man's gaze. A hint of astonishment flashed across his cunning fox eyes. If it weren't for the fact that you're going to serve Feng, for 10 years, I wouldn't have let you off so easily just because you've injured her. After throwing these words, Yun Zhao retracted his aura and spoke in a grim voice. Once he had retracted his aura, Hu Li felt his entire body relax. Unknowingly, his back was already drenched in sweat. At this moment, in a corner not too far away, a woman saw the grim man standing next to Yun Luofeng and a sense of shock flashed across her eyes. Chapter 1257. Isn't that the father and son that Senior Mingqi met before? That day, they had followed Yao Mingqi back and witnessed the fight between Yao Mingqi and the father and son. Yao Mingqi concluded that this man must have been abandoned by his wife, which was why he was so angry and even abused his child. Unfortunately, the man's strength was too terrifying, so much so that Yao Mingqi did not dare to fight back. No, I must tell Senior Mingqi about this. The girl gritted her teeth and quickly ran in another direction. The room was exquisite and luxurious, the pink curtains fluttering in the wind. Yao Mingqi lay on the bed in a daze, her gaze fixed on the roof beam. A line of tears flowed from the corner of her eyes, emitting a sparkling luster. Senior Mingqi. Suddenly, an anxious voice came from outside the room, but it did not cause any change in Yao Mingqi's mood. Her eyes were still dull and gloomy. Senior Mingqi, guess who I just saw? The woman quickly ran in and said while gasping for breath, do you still remember that day when we came back and found a child crying in a house? You went to check it out. Yao Mingqi's gaze finally moved from the roof beam to the girl's face. Just now, I saw that father and son. The girl wiped the sweat from her forehead. Our academy's Yun Luofeng is that man's wife. Yun Luofeng. His wife. Yao Mingqi's hand on the bed sheet clenched tightly, her heart felt like it was being torn apart. She could not help but gasp in pain. Wasn't he abandoned by his wife? Then why was his wife in the academy? Had she misunderstood all this time? Senior Mingqi. The girl carefully looked at the pale Yao Mingqi, not understanding what had happened. Yao Mingqi lowered her eyes and said the only thing she had said since she was crippled. I want to see Master. The girl was overjoyed. Okay, I'll go inform Elder Yao Shu now. She had finally made Senior Mingqi speak. If Elder Yao Shu knew, he would definitely reward her. Thinking of this, the girl quickly turned and left. She wanted to go to the west courtyard to inform Elder Yao Shu. Sure enough, knowing that his own disciple wanted to see him, Elder Yao Shu quickly ran over. His face was filled with heartache as he walked in front of Yao Mingqi. Mingqi, don't worry. I will find a doctor to treat you. Yao Mingqi clenched her fists tightly. Dad, other than them, there was no one else here, so Yao Mingqi called him father. Her tears instantly flowed like a river, and a look of grievance appeared on her face. Mingqi. Yao Shu's heart ached. Tell me, who hurt you? Was it those old bastards from the void? Yao Mingqi shook her head. The one who injured me was Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng. Yao Shu was taken aback. Only then did he remember the storm that had been brewing within the academy recently. He asked hesitantly, You mean our academy's Yun Luofeng? It's her. Yao Mingqi's tears flowed down again. Previously, I saw her abusing her son. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I wanted to meddle in other people's business. Who knew that I would be chased away after being scolded by her? And yesterday, because I was worried, I wanted to enter her house to see if she was abusing her son again. Who knew that just as I entered, I would bump into her? Mingqi, your strength isn't bad, why were you crippled by her? Yao Shu frowned and asked. Chapter 1258. Yao Mingqi's pale face was filled with pain. Father, her son has been educated by her to become an ingrate. I risked my life to help her, but he used that innocent and pure appearance to confuse me. That's why I fell into Yun Luofeng's hands. Not only did she cripple me, she even framed me for stealing. I really didn't do anything. Her voice was hoarse and her face was wet with tears. However, this is not her obedient child. If that boy doesn't listen to her orders, she will definitely abuse him again. What? Yao Shu was furious and slammed the table. The veins on his face bulged. Yun Luofeng, that woman is so cruel. Not only did she abuse a child, she also hurt my daughter. Mingqi, don't worry, I will definitely avenge you. Father, I don't want her to die too early. I want her to feel the same pain that I did. Yao Mingqi lowered her eyes and a trace of ruthlessness flashed across her face. Her voice was hoarse. I'm going to find Yun Luofeng now. Yao Shu's eyes darkened. He didn't even have time to comfort his daughter before he quickly rushed out. Under the azure sky, the crowd had already dispersed. Yun Luofeng was just about to bring Yun Shao into his room when an anxious voice called out from behind. Miss Yun. Nciheo stumbled over. His footsteps were anxious and his voice sounded like he was about to cry. My young mistress is missing. Arole is missing. Xiao Mo's reaction was even more intense than Yun Luofeng's. Quick, let's go find her. Yun Luofeng glanced at Xiao Mo and then at Nciheo. Tell me, what happened? Nciheo's expression changed. Just now, Miss wanted to go out to play so I brought her. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, Miss would disappear? If I'm not wrong, the people there must have found Miss and kidnapped her. Miss Yun, please save my Mississippi. As long as you save her, I will do anything to repay you. After saying this, Nciheo knelt on the ground and kowtowed fiercely. His head quickly turned purple, and blood flowed down his forehead. Yun Luofeng was his last hope. He could only hold on to him tightly. In this place, besides Yun Luofeng, no one else could help him. Let's go first. Tell me more about the situation on the way. And Siheo lifted his head and looked at Yun Luofeng in disbelief. According to his understanding of Yun Luofeng, this young girl had always stayed out of everything. Her willingness to help was simply beyond his expectations. After Yun Luofeng and the rest left, Yao Shu rushed to her cultivation room. However, she was told that Yun Luofeng and the rest had already left the academy. Instantly, he flew into a rage and issued an order to chase after Yun Luofeng even if he was 1,000 miles away. Miss Yun, my family's young miss was adopted by the patriarch and madam, but the patriarch and madam passed away very quickly. Now, the ones in charge of the Ji family are her uncle and aunt. Her aunt is what we often call a bad woman. That bad woman seized all of the Ji family's assets, and even the dowry that madam brought to the Ji family fell into her hands. Along the way, Siheo explained the situation to Yun Luofeng. His expression was anxious and his eyes were full of worry. That bad woman saw that Miss was cute and wanted to sell Miss to someone as a concubine. But my Miss is only 6 years old. To make her a concubine, isn't that forcing her to her death? So I ran away with the young Miss. In the end, that bad woman was so angry that she sent assassins to kill us. Chapter 1259. Since she has given up on making Ji Fei a concubine and wants to kill her instead, why is she still trying to capture her? Yun Luofeng glanced at Siheo and asked. Siheo shook his head. I'm not sure either. She's angry that Miss didn't listen to her, and she thinks that even if Miss marries over, it will still cause trouble for her. She plans to go all out and kill Miss. I don't understand why she wants to capture Miss. Are you sure that it was the Ji family who captured her and not Ji Fei who got lost? Yun Luofeng continued to ask. Siheo shook his head with certainty. It's the Ji family. It must be someone from the Ji family. After I lost the young Miss, I asked around. They saw the young Miss being carried away by someone cute. In addition, I picked up a Ji family token on the road. From this, I concluded that it must be someone from the Ji family. On this mainland, everyone was in danger. No one would meddle in other people's business. Even if they saw a little girl being kidnapped in public, no one would stand up and say anything. Otherwise, if they angered those people, they would definitely suffer. Siheo's expression became more and more anxious. He could imagine how terrified Miss must have been when she had been taken away. It's all my fault. Siheo slapped his head fiercely. I didn't look after Miss well. Otherwise, Miss wouldn't have been taken away. There's no point in saying so much. The most important thing now is to find Ji Fei. Yun Luofeng's eyes darkened as a cold light flashed across them. Siheo pursed his lips and said, Miss Yun, I came to find you with the intention of trying my luck. I had originally thought that you would reject me like before, so why did you choose to help us this time? Yun Luofeng stopped in her tracks. She turned her back to Siheo and looked at the sky in front of her. Yesterday, when I stood next to Huli, I was buried under the rubble. But I heard everything that happened in the arena. Siheo was stunned and looked at Yun Luofeng in surprise. Back then, he had thought that Yun Luofeng had died in the arena, and he had already sunk into grief. But now, he had heard Wang Mujing's smug laughter. New hatred and old hatred had caused him to momentarily lose all reason, and he had gone to find Wang Mujing and fight him to the death. Was that why she was willing to help them? Siheo's actions were not very big, but don't forget, he was no match for Wang Mujing. If it weren't for the fact that Yun Luofeng was still alive, Siheo would definitely have died under the attacks of Wang Mujing and the others. For a moment, Siheo had mixed feelings. He also understood how foolish his actions of pestering Yun Luofeng in the past were. This woman would never take pity on them just because of their begging. It was very easy to get her help. As long as they treated her sincerely, she would repay them 100-fold. Thank you. Nsiheo thanked sincerely. You don't have to thank me now. You can thank me after I rescue Ji Fei. After Yun Luofeng finished speaking, his figure flashed, and he quickly appeared 100 meters away. Nsiheo suppressed the gratitude in his heart and hurriedly chased after her. Ji family. In the courtyard of Gaoting, a beautiful woman was sitting in a pavilion, elegantly sipping tea. At this moment, a guard walked in from outside the courtyard. He was carrying a sack on his shoulder. Inside the sack, there was a constant whimpering sound. Chapter 1260. Thawed. The guard threw the sack on the ground and joined his fists. Madam, I've brought her back. Very good. The beautiful woman slowly turned around and walked to the side of the sack. She lifted her foot and kicked the man who was struggling inside the sack. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. Why don't you keep running? Why don't you keep running? Men, untie this sack. This lady wants to have a good look at this little slut. Just as she spoke, a guard immediately stepped forward and took the sack. A little head poked out from the sack. Her large, bright eyes were filled with stubbornness as she stared fixedly at the people in front of her. Little slut, you dare to glare at me. The beautiful woman laughed icily and lifted the little Lolita from the ground. Her lips curled into a disdainful smile. I've said this before, even if you want to run away, no matter how far you run, I will still be able to hunt you down. I've already given up on you, you little slut. I never thought that someone would be willing to pay a high price to buy you. You've been freeloading in the Ji family for so many years, it's time for you to earn something for me. She had originally intended to sell Ji Fei to an old man, but who would have thought that Ji Fei would fight back with all her might and even escape with Nziheo's help. As for her, how could she let the master know what she had done? Hence, she had informed the master that Ji Fei had eloped with the guard. Ji Fei was only 6 years old, how could the master believe her words? She had sent men to look for Ji Fei, but how could she allow them to find her? Hence, she had sent assassins. If someone had not come to the Ji family and offered to buy Ji Fei, she would not have given up on killing her. Sob, sob. Ji Fei's mouth was covered with a piece of cloth and she could only whimper. She glared fiercely at the beautiful woman, unwilling to be outdone. You still dare to glare at me? The madam's eyes turned cold as she lifted Ji Fei's clothes and said, Ji Fei, I'm warning you. If the master asks, you will tell him that you've eloped with Nziheo. If you dare to say a word, Nziheo's life will be forfeit because of your mistake. The little Lolita's body stiffened and she clenched her fists tightly. Her eyes were filled with flames of anger. The beautiful woman had grasped her weak point. Brother Nziheo was the only family she had left in this world. She would not allow anyone to hurt him. Men, untie her so that the clan leader doesn't discover anything. The beautiful woman coldly snorted and ordered expressionlessly. 2 guards stepped forward and cut the ropes on the little Loli's body. Then, they removed the cloth from her mouth. The little Loli was finally able to breathe, and the first thing she said was to curse. Who is freeloading in your Ji family? My parents are the former patriarch and madam of the Ji family. They left me a lot of money. You guys took that money and still dare to say that I am a freeloader. The real freeloaders are you guys. The little Loli bit her lips tightly. This Ji family was single-handedly founded by her parents. On the contrary, her uncle and auntie relied on her parents to live. If it weren't for her parents, they would definitely be living precarious lives. However, in the end, they occupied his parents' property, and still dared to insult him as a freeloader. Your parents. The beautiful woman sneered, even though your surname is G, do you have the blood of the G family in your body? You're just a daughter that your parents picked up. Since they can't get pregnant, logically speaking, the G family should be managed by their biological brother. Could it be that the G family should be given to an outsider like you instead of his biological brother? Chapter 1261. I'm your father's sister-in-law. So what if I eat and drink in the G family? Who asked them to be blood-related brothers? Who do you think you are? I don't know where you picked up this wild girl. You're clearly a freeloader in the G family. The beautiful woman snorts and looks at little Lolita with a mocking gaze. Little Lolita's face turns red with anger. In the family tree, I'm my father and mother's daughter. Hearing little Lolita's words, the beautiful woman frowns slightly. This little girl dares to speak to her like this. In the past, in the G family, other than the matter of making her a concubine, little Lolita would never dare to go west if she told her to, let alone fight for her own interests. She's only left for a few months, but her temper has become so bad and hard. G Fei, I'm in charge of the G family now. Everything in the G family is managed by me. If I say that you're a freeloader, then you're just freeloading here. And my G family doesn't intend to support a big living person like you. Little Lolita snorts, Ziheo Gidge and I are living outside and relying on ourselves. Why did you bring me back? You've lived in the G family for 6 years. Shouldn't you do something for this family? The beautiful woman slightly narrows her eyes. That lord used an extremely powerful spiritual beast and tens of millions of silver to buy you. For the G family, you must go. Little Lolita's body trembles slightly. 6 years. My father and mother have only died for a year. You actually said that you've raised me for 6 years. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen anyone in this world shameless to this extent. The beautiful woman sneers, that's because your father and mother were too stupid. They helped others raise their daughter. And they don't care about it. I don't want the G family to suffer. In these 6 years, which of your food and clothing wasn't paid for by the G family? You apprenticed to a master and learned martial arts because of my G family. My G family has raised you for so long. You must do something for us. She keeps mentioning the G family, treating herself as a member of the G family. As the daughter of the previous head of the G family, little Lolita is an outsider. Little Lolita's face turns pale and she takes a few steps back. Just as she was about to turn around and run away, the sound of hurried footsteps came from behind her. Fei Fei, you're back. You're really back. Come and let me see you. Have you lost weight recently? The middle-aged man quickly walked over and hugged the little Loli. His face was full of joy. Your father handed you over to me before he passed away. If anything happens to you outside, how will I explain it to your father in the underworld? The beautiful woman changed her sinister expression and walked towards the middle-aged man with a smile. Master, Fei Fei is back. Don't worry. Besides, she just admitted that she eloped with Ziheo because she was tempted by him. She already knows her mistake, so don't blame her. The beautiful woman turned to Ji Fei and a cold light flashed across her eyes. She said with a fake smile, Fei Fei, don't you think so? Seeing the warning in the beautiful woman's eyes, Ji Fei fell silent. She didn't know if Ziheo had really fallen into her hands. If Ziheo was really in her hands and she didn't listen to her, Ziheo would definitely be in danger. It really is that ingrate, Ziheo. The middle-aged man flew into a rage. If my younger brother hadn't saved him, he wouldn't have lived to this day. Now, he eloped with my younger brother's daughter. Fei Fei is only 6 years old. How could Ziheo do such a thing that's worse than an animal? Chapter 1262. Ingrate. Ji Fei laughed coldly in her heart. Speaking of ingrates, they were probably more like it. Don't be fooled by the middle-aged man's close relationship with him. That was because he had yet to fully control the Ji family. If word got out that he had mistreated his own brother's daughter, his reputation would plummet. Hence, he would never let such a thing happen. Fei Fei should be tired. Bring her to rest and dress her up. I will not let my brother's daughter suffer any grievances. The middle-aged man looked up at the beautiful woman and calmly instructed. Master, leave Fei Fei to me. I will treat her well. The beautiful woman lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. The sinister look in her eyes deepened. She was so happy that she could not close her mouth when she thought of the generous conditions offered by those people. Great Dragon Wall. On the bustling street, Enchanting stopped in his tracks. He looked at the man and woman beside him and said, Young Master Yun Xiao, Miss Yun, this is the Ji family's territory. The Ji family's influence in Great Dragon Wall is vast, and the master of the Ji family has already reached the level of a sage king. Enchanting was very angry at this point. Back then, before the previous master, who was Mrs. Father, died, I don't know what he gave the master of the Ji family to make him break through to the level of a sage king. He also asked him to take care of Miss, but I never thought that the Ji family would treat her like this. Her parents had died in an accident, they had forcefully seized the family's assets, then chased the single daughter out of the family. How familiar was this scene? Yun Luofeng's heart suddenly tightened. A cold light flashed in her lowered eyes. Back in Huaxia, she had also experienced such a scene. Even now, she could not forget those people's faces. Let's go to the Ji family home now. Yun Luofeng raised her evil eyes slightly, and a murderous intent spread from her body. Who's there? At the entrance of the Ji family home, the two guards at the door saw the menacing group and their expressions instantly turned cold. However, when they caught a glimpse of Enchanting, who was following closely behind, their cold expressions turned into shock. Enchanting, how dare you come back? One of the guards looked furious. He shot a look at his comrade and said, Hurry and inform the master and madam that Enchanting has returned. All right. The guard turned around and walked into the courtyard. Not long after, a man and a woman led a group of people out in a hurry. The man had a dignified expression on his face, and his eyes were like torches. The beautiful woman next to him had a smile on her face, and when she saw Enchanting standing at the entrance, her beautiful eyes flashed with killing intent. Enchanting. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth. You ingrate, you dare to return to my Ji family. Ingrates. Enchanting sneered, You're talking about yourself, aren't you? Impudent. The middle-aged man flew into a rage, You're just a little guard, yet you dare to speak to this patriarch in such a manner. Who gave you such courage? Enchanting raised his handsome face, his expression fearless. You merely inherited your position as the family head from my master. If it wasn't for old master, I don't know where you would be now. Hee hee. The middle-aged man was so angry that he laughed. Speaking of my younger brother, I want to settle the score with you. My younger brother has always treated you well and even treated you like his own son. What did you do? You seduced his daughter and even eloped with her. Fei Fei is only 6 years old. How could you do such a thing that is worse than an animal? Was he hallucinating just now? Brother Enchanting didn't come. Just as she was about to turn around in disappointment, the crisp sound of a chain being cut came from behind her, causing her small body to stiffen. Miss, I'm here to pick you up, Miss, I have come to take you away. The little lowly could not believe her ears. She bit her lips and turned her head stiffly. And Ziheo appeared in front of her, covered in blood. Chapter 1265. And Ziheo held a long sword in his hand, the blade dripping with fresh blood. Behind him, 2 guards lay in a pool of their own blood. Brother Ziheo, the little Loli's face changed from disbelief to surprise. Her mouth twitched as tears almost rolled down her cheeks. She cried out and pounced towards Ziheo, fiercely crashing into his arms. Brother Ziheo, they want to sell me to someone else. I'm so scared, sob. Ever since arriving at the G family home, she had been suppressing her emotions. It was only when she saw Ziheo that her tears burst out. No matter how mature little Lolita was, she was still just a 6-year-old child. How could she not be afraid? Ziheo hugged little Lolita's body tightly. He gently lowered his eyes to hide the heartache in his eyes. I've said it before, no matter where you are, I will come and find you. He slowly released little Lolita in his arms and squatted down. His resolute gaze met her tear-filled eyes. Miss, I will always be your guard. A guard's duty was to protect Miss's safety. So, he would never abandon her for the rest of his life. Little Lolita wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Her adorable face lit up with a smile. Brother Ziheo, how did you get here? Why did those 2 let you in? Miss, I'm not the only one here. Miss Yun is here too, Yun Luofeng. Little Lolita was stunned. Her eyes curved into crescent moons and her smile was as bright as the sun. I knew that she would definitely come to save me. Why? Ziheo was stunned. How did you know? Because she taught me how to kill. Little Lolita smiled adorably. From the moment she taught me how to kill, she accepted us. Ziheo laughed bitterly. In the end, he was the only one who was shocked by Yun Luofeng's help. But Miss had already seen through everything. Let's go, Mississippi. Miss Yun is still waiting for us outside. Ziheo held little Lolita's hand and walked out of the house. From this moment onwards, he would never let Miss come to any harm. On the streets outside the G family home, there were already many pedestrians gathered. These people were shocked by Yun Zhao's strength, and were also deeply puzzled by the fact that the other party had come to the Ji family to cause trouble. Yun Luofeng's sharp eyes caught sight of Ziheo and his servant walking out of the courtyard, and his expression finally relaxed. It seems that the Ji family did not mistreat Ji Fei. If that was the case, she was relieved, Fei Fei. The middle-aged man's expression changed when he saw Ziheo holding the little Lolita's hand. You still want to elope with Ziheo? How can you face your parents if you do this? The little girl raised her head and looked at the middle-aged man. She said in a childish voice, I didn't elope with brother Ziheo. Auntie has wronged us. She wanted to sell me to an old man as a concubine, but I didn't agree, so she wanted to put me under house arrest. It was big brother Ziheo who helped me escape. The crowd was in an uproar. During this period of time, Long Chongqing and everyone else had thought that the little girl of the Ji family had eloped with a guard. Now, it seemed that there was more to it than meets the eye. What nonsense are you spouting? The beautiful woman was furious and glared at the little Loli. Little Lolita raised her head and stared fearlessly into the woman's fierce eyes. When you saw that I had escaped, you sent assassins to hunt me down. But later, because someone offered you a spiritual beast in tens of millions of silvers to buy me, you agreed. You also gave up on hunting me down and brought me back to the Ji family. Chapter 1266. The beautiful woman's body began to tremble violently. She could already see the looks of ridicule in the eyes of the crowd. Damned girl, if you continue to spout nonsense, I'll tear your mouth apart. The little Loli scoffed, just now, you used Brother Ziheo's life to threaten me and force me to admit to this matter. If I didn't agree, you would make a move on Brother Ziheo. These past few months, it was Brother Ziheo who risked his life to protect me. That's why I was able to survive. For Brother Ziheo's sake, I had no choice but to let you control me. The crowd had already begun to point fingers at the beautiful woman. The looks of ridicule and disdain were like a thorn that pierced fiercely into her heart. The little loli gripped in Ziheo's hand tightly and continued, "You said that I was a freeloader in the G family. The G family had raised me for 6 years, so I should contribute to the G family." Ji Fei. The beautiful woman wanted to stop the little loli. However, the little loli could not even bear to look at her and continued to narrate her crimes. The G family was established by my parents. I'm their adopted daughter and their only daughter. Yet you think that I'm just an outsider. You're the people closest to my parents. You even said that you deserve everything in the G family. I'm just a freeloader who stayed in the G family. The crowd on the street could no longer bear to watch. Voices of criticism swarmed towards the beautiful woman like a tidal wave. This madam of the G family actually dares to say such things. TSK, you really don't know a person's face. I thought that she had treated Ji Fei very well. Even though Ji Fei is only an adopted daughter, she was adopted by the previous head of the Ji family. According to the genealogy, she is the rightful heir to the Ji family. If Ji Fei had not been so young, the previous head of the Ji family would not have handed the family over to his own younger brother. Unfortunately, the previous head of the Ji family did not have a good eye for people. Ji Fei was wronged by the Ji family and was almost sold off. She was even labeled as a freeloader and even shamelessly claimed that the Ji family had raised Ji Fei for 6 years. TSK, were they the ones who raised her for 6 years? That's the daughter that the former patriarch raised himself. For many years, this shameless couple lived and ate for free in the Ji family, enjoying the grace that the Ji family brought them. But their parents died less than a year ago, and they want to sell their daughter. I've seen shameless people, but only this pair are shameless to this extent. Today, I've really broadened my horizons. After saying what she wanted to say in her heart, Ji Fei felt her entire body relax. The unwillingness and anger that she had suppressed for many days was finally revealed in front of others. The beautiful woman's body went limp and she collapsed to the ground. Her forehead was covered with a layer of cold sweat and her face was pale. Dan Min. The middle-aged man turned to Dan Min angrily. Is what she said true? Dan Min's face grew paler and paler. Suddenly, she smiled, and it was a sinister smile. Am I wrong? She had been freeloading in the Ji family. She doesn't have the bloodline of the Ji family in her body. She's not even a member of the Ji family. The beautiful woman's hair was disheveled and she looked like a lunatic. Her eyes emitted a dark green light. This Ji family is ours. We definitely can't give it to that little hussy, Ji Fei. Shut up. At this moment, Yun Xiao had already retracted his tail teeth. So, the middle-aged man quickly ran in front of Dan Min and fiercely slapped her across the face. Who allowed you to say such words? Fei Fei is my younger brother's only daughter. You actually dare to say that she's freeloading. Chapter 1267. Dan Min lowered her head. Her hair was a mess on her temples as her lips slowly curled into a sarcastic smile. You are the only heir to the Ji family. As the elder brother, the Ji family will be yours after your younger brother dies. Who does Ji Fei think she is? She's just an adopted daughter, not a real member of the Ji family. You. The middle-aged man trembled in anger. Of course, his thoughts were the same as Dan Min's. He believed that he should be the head of the Ji family. However, he was not stupid enough to show it in front of others. He angrily scolded, "Hurry up and apologize to Fei Fei." Dan Min scoffed and turned around. Her eyes were filled with disdain. Fei Fei. When the middle-aged man saw that it was Dan Min, he quickly walked over to her and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's all eldest uncle's fault for making you suffer. Don't worry, eldest uncle will avenge you and divorce this woman. Eldest uncle has always doted on you. How could I allow you to suffer?" The little Lolita gently raised the corners of her lips and blinked her large eyes. "If I wanted to take back everything that belonged to my parents, would you give it to me?" The middle-aged man looked a little embarrassed. He said earnestly, "Fei Fei, you're too young. It's not easy to be the head of the family. Over the past year, haven't I worked hard enough? How could I bear to see you work so hard? You should still be the eldest miss of the Ji family. I can give you a position that is second only to one and above all." The little Lolita tilted her head innocently. "But I'm not afraid of being tired. Can eldest uncle return my power? This was left behind by my father. Besides, brother Zihao has been helping me." The middle-aged man's expression darkened. He glanced at Zihao and said in a low voice, "Fei Fei, in this world, how can outsiders be more reliable than family? And Zihao may have been with you for so many years, but he is still an outsider. If you ask him to help you, isn't that the same as giving him power?" The little Lolita smiled. "Eldest uncle, during the days that I've been away, it was this outsider you speak of who used his life to protect me. Even when he went to work as a laborer, he never let me suffer from hunger. In comparison, you so-called relatives have always schemed against me, and even slapped my father's family and refused to give me anything." The middle-aged man's expression gradually became cold. "Fei Fei, stop fooling around. Let's go home first, okay? When we get back, I'll have a good chat with you." "No." The little Loli pushed away the middle-aged man's hand, raised her head, and said word by word, "I only want Ji's family." Yun Luofeng was right. A kind person would be bullied, and a kind horse would be ridden. If she wanted to never be bullied again, she had to become stronger. "Fei Fei." The middle-aged man's expression was somewhat ugly. "This Ji family was handed over to me by your father. I have to be responsible for the Ji family. If I put the Ji family in your hands, what if you completely destroy the Ji family? How am I going to see your father?" The little Loli's eyes were stubborn. "No matter what you say, this Ji family is mine." Yun Luofeng's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the two of them clash. "Yun Xiao, if anyone dares to stop Ji Fei from managing the Ji family, kill them without mercy." When he heard the words "kill without mercy," the middle-aged man's body trembled violently. He gritted his teeth and looked at Yun Luofeng. "Aren't you meddling too much? Are you going to meddle in other people's family affairs?" As if recalling the grievances she had suffered over the past year, the little Loli cried louder and louder, her tears flowing down like a torrential rain. After a while, the entire porcelain bottle was filled with her tears. "That's enough." Little Amo put the porcelain bottle away and his delicate face lit up with a smile. "Master, we have the ingredient. Next, we need a few other medicinal ingredients. These ingredients aren't very valuable and the medicine shop will definitely have them. If that's the case, let's go." Chapter 1269. Yun Luofeng then turned and walked out of the great hall. "Miss, you stay here, I'll send them off." And Zihao returned to his senses and quickly chased after her. Perhaps sensing his pursuit, Yun Luofeng stopped in her tracks, turned her back to Zihao and said, I know you must be curious about Ji Fei's true identity, but I won't tell you. Knowing this won't do you any good. You only need to protect her for the rest of your life, and that's enough. Nciheo was not stupid. Ji Fei's tears could be used as medicine. How could she be an ordinary child? I understand. Nciheo did not pursue the matter any further and nodded solemnly. For the rest of my life, I, Nciheo, will use my life to protect Mrs. Safety. Even if I die in battle for her, I will use my soul to continue to protect her. Even if I have to ascend to the heavens or descend to the underworld, nothing can stop my determination. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a smile and she did not say anything else. Her gaze turned towards the sky in front of her. Yun Xiao, Xiao Mo, let's go. Yun Xiao silently followed behind Yun Luofeng. Her cold black eyes stared at the young girl's figure and the coldness on her handsome face gradually disappeared. At this moment, Yun Luofeng, who was rushing back, was completely unaware of the storm that awaited her upon her return to the academy. In the west courtyard, Yao Shu, who was listening to his subordinate's report, was suddenly pulled back by an angry shout. He frowned and a fierce light flashed across his eyes. Then, he saw a furious Ling Hai rush in from outside the door. The guards could not stop him no matter how hard they tried. Yao Shu, get out here. Ling Hai rushed in front of Yao Shu and without saying a word, he started to attack him. With a loud bang, Yao Shu dodged to the side and a large hole was punched in the wall behind him by Ling Hai's fist. Ling Hai's fingers cracked as he clenched them. Yao Shu, you expelled Yun Luofeng from the academy. You even sent people to kill her. Yao Shu laughed coldly and his face was filled with ridicule. Yun Luofeng is extremely cruel. First, she abused her own son. Then, because my disciple stopped her, she crippled my disciple's limbs. I will definitely settle this debt with her. Ling Hai laughed out loud. Yun Luofeng has a son. Are you kidding me? How could she have a son? Wasn't it because our East Courtyard changed the hall master of the duty hall, so you held a grudge and made up a reason to attack Yun Luofeng? Ling Hai, if you don't believe me, you can go ask around. Who in the entire academy doesn't know that Yun Luofeng has a son? What I don't understand is, why are you so angry because of Yun Luofeng's matter? Only a few people knew about what had happened in the duty hall that day. Thus, Yao Shu did not know about the relationship between Yun Luofeng and the East Courtyard. Humph. Chapter 1270. Director. The director has been gone for so many years, do you think he will come back? Yao Shu slowly stood up, the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Furthermore, Yun Luofeng did it, my disciple said it herself, she never lies. Ling Hai fiercely flung his sleeves, even if it was really my disciple who did it, it must be your disciple who did something infuriating. Don't try to push the blame away. As long as I am here, no one can chase my disciple away. After saying this, Ling Hai once again glared at Yao Shu fiercely, turned around and left angrily. Staring at his departing figure, Yao Shu's eyes turned even colder. East Courtyard. Looks like Meng Qi's injury has something to do with the East Courtyard. Do you really think you can protect Yun Luofeng? What a joke, the person I want to kill will never live to see tomorrow. Wuhui Mainland. Ji family. On the luxurious carved bed, the red bed curtains fluttered in the wind, faintly revealing the alluring scene on the bed. Ji Zhoutian half reclined on the bed, his red robe half unbuttoned, revealing his fair, jade-like chest. His features were exquisite, with a red dot between his brows, slightly raised, wild and domineering. Two beautiful maids squatted on the bed, massaging his legs. The entire room was filled with an unusual anger. Master. At this moment, a maid's voice came from outside the door. Someone from the 7 continents is here. 7 continents. The man raised his eyebrows. Who? West Continent Institute, Elder Fifin. Originally, the maid thought she would be punished for disturbing the man, who knew that only the man's charming laughter could be heard from inside the room. 7 continents. Yun Luofeng has been in the 7 continents for some time, let him in. Yes, master. Just as she finished speaking, the maid's footsteps gradually faded away. Not long after, the room door was pushed open by an old hand. Lin Fifin hurried in from outside. His eyes immediately saw the bewitching man on the bed, his eyes instantly filled with grievance. Director, when are you going back to the school? The school cannot be left unattended, you should return with us. The man's smiling eyes were like a sharp sword that shot towards Lin Fifin. He picked up a grape by the side with his fingernails and gently squeezed it until it burst. A cold light flashed across his slightly narrowed eyes. If the Western Continent Academy needs me to go back and take charge, then what are you elders for? Lin Fifin's voice paused. The Western Continent Academy has been divided into 2 big sects, the East Courtyard and the West Courtyard. But before the internal troubles were settled, external troubles came. Back then, when you were still around, even the Continent Lord had to be courteous to our Western Continent Academy. Once you disappeared, the Continent Lord no longer placed our academy in his eyes. The man casually picked up another grape. This time, he did not crush it. Instead, he elegantly placed it in his mouth. All these years, I have only managed your Western Continent Academy on behalf of my good friend. This does not mean that the Western Continent Academy can restrict me. Ding! Lin Fifin still wanted to say something, but the man's expression gradually became impatient. I have helped him for so many years, that's enough. Go back, there's no need to come to the Ji family to find me. Lin Fifin sighed helplessly. He took one last look at the bewitching man, then walked out with a bitter smile. Western Continent. Ji Jotian gently placed a finger on his lips, his smile extremely bewitching. I should indeed make a trip to the Western Continent, but not to the Western Continent Academy. Chapter 1271. The maid gathered her courage and asked, Master is planning to find Miss Yun. That's right. Ji Jotian laughed maniacally. I haven't seen that girl in a long time, I really miss her. After a while, I'll go find her. Thinking of Yun Luofeng, Ji Jotian's smile deepened and the corners of his lips involuntarily rose. But Ji Jotian frowned. The Ji family spatial tunnel leads to the West Continent Academy. I really don't want to see those old things. But this is the only way I can reach the 7 continents faster. West Continent Academy. At the entrance, Yun Zhao's arm was wrapped around Yun Luofeng's waist. Just as she was about to enter, she was stopped by 2 people. Yun Luofeng, you're no longer a disciple of the West Continent Academy. You have no right to take another step into the West Continent Academy. A guard blocked in front of Yun Luofeng and said expressionlessly. The other guard saw Yun Luofeng appear and immediately turned to run back to the academy. He was going to inform Yao Shu. Yun Luofeng looked at the guard who stopped her and gently patted Yun Zhao's hand, indicating for him not to make a move. Who gave the order to chase me out of the West Continent Academy? She raised her brows and looked coldly at the guard in front of her. The guard replied coldly, It's Elder Yao Shu's order. You injured Elder Yao Shu's disciple and still dare to return to the academy, you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Yao Shu's disciple? Yun Luofeng did not understand and did not know what had happened. Yun Luofeng. Suddenly, an anxious voice sounded from the front. Yun Luofeng looked up and saw Hu Li quickly rushing out of the courtyard. Yun Luofeng, hurry and leave this place. Hu Li's expression was very anxious and she kept looking back as if she was afraid that someone would chase after them. Yun Luofeng became even more confused. Hu Li, what exactly happened? She had only left for half a month. What exactly had happened in the academy? Yun Luofeng, elder Yao Shu's disciple, Yao Mingqi, had her tendons cut by someone a while ago. Now she has come out and said that it was you who did it. Hurry and leave this place, it'll be too late if you don't leave now. Yun Luofeng was silent. She thought for a moment, but she still couldn't figure out who this Yao Mingqi was. Yao Mingqi. Could it be her? Little Amo exclaimed in surprise. Yun Luofeng turned to look at Little Amo. You know him? Little Amo rubbed his nose and said, the woman who broke into our house had her tendons cut off by Yun Shao. Furthermore, not only did she eat the food that Yun Shao made for you, she even tried to seduce Yun Shao. So, she reaped what she sowed. I just don't know why she said that you did all of this. Yun Luofeng subconsciously glanced at Yun Shao, the corners of his lips curling into a smile. Isn't there a saying that love begets hate? Chapter 1272. From the moment he had cut off Yao Mingqi's tendons, he had never placed the West Continent Academy in his eyes. Hu Li's mouth twitched a few times and he said helplessly, you guys better leave quickly. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. Just as he finished speaking, a powerful force suddenly attacked from behind, carrying with it a monstrous rage as it launched an attack towards Yun Luofeng. Yun Zhao's body flashed and he appeared in front of Yun Luofeng. He raised his palm gently and without any unnecessary movements, he clenched his fist. At the same time, energy surged out from his body and with a bang, he pushed the incoming person back. Yao Shu's expression was extremely serious as he stared coldly at Yun Shao. Who are you? The person I'm looking for is Yun Luofeng. Unrelated people, get out of my way. Yun Zhao's face was expressionless as he stared coldly at Yao Shu. His black robe fluttered without any wind and his aura was austere. Yun Luofeng. Yao Shu's gaze moved away from Yun Shao and landed on Yun Luofeng's face. He gritted his teeth. It's you, you hurt my disciple. Today, since you've returned to the West Continent Academy, I'll cripple your powers and make you kneel in front of my disciple for 3 months. I'll let you have a taste of the pain she endured. Yao Shu's eyes filled with rage as he thought of his daughter who was lying on the bed. He wanted nothing more than to tear Yun Luofeng into 1,000 pieces. Your disciple. A hoarse voice came from the side. The man's expression was as cold and emotionless as usual. I heard her. Boom. Yao Shu's anger surged again as he stared coldly at Yun Shao. That's impossible. My disciple said that the person who hurt her was Yun Luofeng. That must be Yun Luofeng. Yun Luofeng couldn't defeat my disciple, so he used this kid as bait to deceive my disciple. My disciple is kind and didn't guard against a child at all. That's why she fell into their trap. His sharp gaze swept across Xiao Mo's body as the murderous intent in his eyes intensified. Xiao Mo laughed mockingly. Your disciple clearly tried to seduce my father and was injured by him. Yet, she blamed my mother for it. TSK, in your heart, is this kind of woman a kind person? Humph. Yao Shu snorted coldly. Don't even think of framing my disciple. My disciple has a whole bunch of suitors, it's impossible for her to seduce this man. Hu Li is also one of her pursuers. If she chooses Hu Li, why would she look for a man who already has a wife? Puff! Hu Li almost spat out his saliva. What did this have to do with him? Moreover, when did he become Yao Mingqi's pursuer? Why didn't he know? I see. Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes and looked at Hu Li with a faint smile. So you are Yao Mingqi's pursuer? Cough cough. Hu Li coughed twice and shrugged. It has nothing to do with me. I've never liked a woman like Yao Mingqi. Even if she came knocking on my door, I wouldn't accept her. Hu Li. Seeing that someone dared to humiliate his daughter, Yao Shu flew into a rage. What did you say? Do you dare to repeat what you just said? Am I not clear enough? Even if Yao Mingqi came to me, I wouldn't like her. Hu Li might as well give up. At most, he would leave West Continent College with Yun Luofeng. He felt that following beside Yun Luofeng was better than staying in this kind of place. Moreover, West Continent College's East Dean elders were all Yun Luofeng's masters. If they could rush over, Yun Luofeng might not be in danger. Good, it seems like you don't want to mingle in West Continent College anymore. Since that's the case, from today onwards, you are no longer a disciple of our college. Yao Shu's eyes flashed coldly as he gritted his teeth. Chapter 1273. Elder Yao Shu, I'm afraid this isn't too good. When the other elders of the West Academy saw Yao Shu's action, they quickly advised, Hu Li is a disciple on the heaven list. If you expel him, our academy will lose 2 geniuses at once. So what? I said I would expel him, so he must be expelled. I won't let off anyone who insults my disciple. In this life, he owed Yao Mingqi too much. And because of his negligence, his daughter had suffered such harm. So how could he allow these people who had harmed her to get away scot-free? Didn't you say you wanted to speak up for Yun Luofeng? Then there's no need for you to stay. In any case, my Western Continent Academy doesn't lack you. Ha! A cold laugh pierced through the sky, landing in everyone's ears. I really don't know when it was your turn to make decisions in the Western Continent Academy. Su Kong and the others walked over from behind, their expressions filled with fury. Only when they saw that Yun Luofeng was safe and sound did they sigh in relief. Shuang bitterly smiled. She had originally thought that after taking in a female disciple, she would have much more leisure time. Who would have thought that Yun Luofeng would cause more trouble than anyone else? In the time she had taken her in, she had caused quite a bit of commotion in the academy. But so what? Who told her to be their disciple? Could it be that she had to just watch as these bastards bullied her? You really want to stop me from getting revenge for my disciple? Yao Shu's eyes sank. This Yun Luofeng has committed a monstrous crime. First, he abused his own son, and then he harmed Meng Qi, who wanted to protect the weak. He even framed Meng Qi for stealing. How can I endure this? In any case, no matter who comes today, Yun Luofeng must die. Yao Shu's aura once more exploded out, surging into the sky. Under this heavy aura, some of the guards couldn't even breathe. Shuang quickly walked over to Yun Luofeng, a warm smile on her face. Fenger, don't be afraid. Our masters will protect you. Tell us what exactly happened, and we'll definitely get justice for you. Yun Luofeng did not speak, but little Mo could not help but speak up. It was Yao Mingqi who wanted to seduce my father. She was also injured by my father, and my parents did not beat me up. It was she who took a fancy to my father and took the opportunity to strike up a conversation. Who knew that my father would ignore her, so she took the opportunity to sneak into my house. With just a few words, he had explained everything clearly. Surprise flashed across Shui Ying's eyes. What surprised her was that Yun Luofeng really had a son. What followed was a bellyful of anger. His cold eyes turned towards Yao Shu. Your disciple is so daring that he even dares to seduce my disciple's husband. Did she really lack men that much? If she's really a man, there are so many students in the academy who would definitely be willing to have sex with her. Usually, Shuang was very gentle, and even Su Kong and the others rarely saw her angry. But now, she was clearly unable to control her anger, and her words were very poisonous. Shuang! Yao Shu raged. You humiliated Mengqi. Shuang sneered, it was she who did such a shameless thing. How can you blame others for humiliating her? Ha ha ha. Yao Shu was so angry that he started laughing. Good elder of the East Institution. It seems that you really want to protect Yun Luo Feng to the end. If that's the case, then we can only decide victory or defeat in one battle. The West Institution and the East Institution had fought openly and secretly for so many years, but they had never shed all pretense of cordiality. But now, for Yun Luo Feng, the elders of the two institutions stood on opposite sides. Chapter 1274. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't touched. Yun Luo Feng had his own goals when he first came to the academy. He didn't really treat them as his masters. But these elders had always treated him as a disciple. A warm current flowed through his heart. Yun Luofeng's lips curled into a devilish smile and his black eyes glowed. Yun Shao, if my masters can't beat Yao Shu and the others, then you don't have to care so much. Okay. Yun Shao hugged Yun Luofeng's body gently and looked at Yao Shu and the others coldly. The entire entrance of the academy instantly became tense. All the disciples of the academy hid far away, deeply afraid that the battle between the two sides would affect them. Hu Li walked in front of Yun Luo Feng and smiled. I didn't think that Yao Mingqi's injury was really because of you guys. Yun Luo Feng glanced at him. Your heart aches. Immediately, Hu Li fell silent. He looked at Yun Luo Feng resentfully. I have nothing to do with Yao Mingqi. Why should I feel sorry for her? On the contrary, she thinks that I like her and keeps pestering me. I've explained it many times, but she still thinks that I love her deeply. Hu Li was helpless. Suddenly, he thought of something and couldn't help but laugh. Oh right, I heard from Yao Mingqi not long ago that she saw a man abusing his child. I didn't expect that she was talking about your husband. Yun Luo Feng raised his eyebrows and gestured for him to continue. Yao Mingqi said that this child is very pitiful and your husband is also pitiful. On the contrary, you abandoned your husband and child for an evil woman. Unforgivable. It's because you abandoned your husband that he became so cold and heartless. That's why your child was abused like this. TSK, I really don't know how she saw this. Yun Zhao's dark eyes stared at Yun Luo Feng. You can't abandon your husband and child. He thought about it and added, I've already become yours. You can't pull up your pants and deny it. Ever since the old man said that he would not recognize anyone if he pulled up his pants, Yun Shao often said this. She smiled helplessly. After a while, we'll go back and get married. Okay. A smile gradually surfaced in Yun Zhao's eyes. Feng I'll let you marry in style. A grand wedding. In Yun Luofeng's mind, the scene of Yun Shao delivering the betrothal gift surfaced. Just the proposal alone was already so sensational. Just how glorious would the grand marriage that Yun Shao spoke of be? Just as the two of them were stuck together like glue, Yao Shu had already taken the initiative to attack Su Kong and the others. Once they reached this level, it would be very difficult for others to intervene in the battle. Therefore, the Academy's disciples could only see a few figures fighting in the void, but they were unable to determine their strength. Is this the power of an Academy elder? He was so powerful that no one could match him. Boom boom boom. In the void, countless streams of energy spread out, causing the entire sky to turn gray. It was as if a layer of dust had covered the originally azure sky. Elder. Just as the two sides were locked in a fierce battle, a panicked voice rushed over. I sensed a power coming from the wormhole in the academy. If I'm not wrong, someone must have come through the wormhole. What? In the void, the two sides separated. They looked at each other with shock in their eyes. Chapter 1275. Someone came through the wormhole. Could it be? It's the Dean, it must be the Dean. Shuang was overjoyed. I met the Dean about 10 years ago. I haven't seen him for 10 years. I didn't expect the Dean to come back at this time. Su Kong and the others were also surprised, forgetting about the battle just now. Yao Shu, since the Dean is back, let's seek justice from the Dean. Su Kong looked at Yao Shu and his lips curled into a cold smile. Yao Shu laughed and his eyes were filled with anger. Even if the Dean is back, he will definitely stand on my side. After all, my disciple was crippled by Yun Luofeng. Don't tell me that I don't even have the right to seek justice. You just listened to your disciple's side of the story and you think that my disciple was in the wrong first. Shuang said coldly. The Dean will naturally seek justice for this matter. Let's go and pardon her now. After saying this, she walked to Yun Luofeng's side and said, Feng, don't be afraid. The Dean will definitely seek justice for us. Yun Luofeng smiled evilly. Yun Shao, let's go and join in the fun. At the same time, let's see what kind of person the Dean is. The West Continent Academy's wormhole was located at the back of the mountain. Other than the elders, no one else had the right to enter the back of the mountain. At this moment, at the entrance of a cave in the back of the mountain, the elders looked nervous as they stared unblinkingly at the entrance of the cave. In an instant, a ray of light flashed and a coquettish man slowly walked out of the cave. His red clothes were brighter than blood and he was peerless. It seems that I have been discovered. The man's red lips curled into a smile. His clothes were always half open and he was coquettish and flirtatious. Greetings, Dean. All the elders knelt down and greeted him respectfully. The man held the back of his head with both hands and narrowed his eyes. His gaze swept across the crowd and in the next moment, he found Yun Luofeng standing behind the crowd. Yun Luofeng was stunned. Ji Zhoutian was the dean of the West Continent Academy. Was this world so small? She actually bumped into him here. Yun Shao felt the change in the girl next to him and held her hand tightly. He looked at Ji Zhoutian coldly and became slightly vigilant. Dean! Yao Shu stood up from the ground and cried, You have to help me. My disciple was injured and her hands and feet were broken, but these people from the East Courtyard still want to protect her. This is really infuriating. Ji Zhoutian withdrew his gaze from Yun Luofeng and raised his eyebrows at the elders. I want to know what exactly happened. Principal, Shuang glared fiercely at Yao Shu. It was Yao Shu's disciple who tried to seduce my disciple's man. That's why I took revenge. Hee. Yao Shu sneered and said mockingly, My disciple needs to seduce men. Especially when the other party was someone else's man. This woman can't compare to my disciple in any way, and now she wants to frame her. His gaze was directed at Yun Luofeng. Ji Zhoutian looked at Yun Luofeng again, and the corners of his lips curled up into a meaningful smile. You said that the person who crippled your disciple was Yun Luofeng. Yao Shu did not react for a moment and replied, That's right, it was Yun Luofeng. She abused her own son and my disciple saw it, so she crippled my disciple. Principal, you. Chapter 1276. Suddenly, Yao Shu reacted and stared at Ji Zhoutian with widened eyes. Dean. You. How did you know her name is Yun Luofeng? Ji Zhoutian smiled. Her smile was as wild and domineering as usual. Unfortunately, this girl is my friend. Friend? Yao Shu widened his eyes in shock and stared at Ji Jiutian in disbelief. At this moment, he even suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Did the dean just say Yun Luofeng was his friend? Yao Shu's face paled at this moment. He took 2 steps back and stumbled before falling to the ground. Despair filled his heart. Ji Jiutian slowly walked towards Yao Shu. Based on my understanding of Yun Luofeng, she would never provoke anyone. On the contrary, there are often blind people who provoke her. If it wasn't for your daughter angering her, she wouldn't have crippled her. Also, Ji Jiutian paused, his smile was sinister. You said that Yun Luofeng can't compare to your disciple. Which means that there's something wrong with my judgment, right? Yao Shu's lips trembled slightly. He laughed dryly. Dean, this is a misunderstanding. Everything is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. Ji Jiutian laughed wildly. Then why didn't you say it was a misunderstanding before? When I said that Yun Luofeng was my friend, you said it was a misunderstanding. It seems that in the 10 years that I left, West Continent Academy was indeed not as good as before. Su Kong and the others looked at each other. They never thought that Yun Luofeng would be the dean's disciple. This matter was too unexpected, and it shook everyone's hearts. Yun Luofeng, Huli looked at Yun Luofeng resentfully. Why didn't you say so earlier that you knew the dean? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes. I didn't know that other than being the ancestor of the Ji family, this guy was also the dean of West Continent Academy. What other identities does he have? I'm interested. Hearing this, Yun Xiao quickly turned Yun Luofeng's head around so that she could look at her. She said jealously, it's enough that you're interested in me, you don't need to be interested in him. Dean. Ling Hai looked at Yao Shu. Whenever he thought about how Yao Shu wanted to make a move on his disciple, the anger in his heart would surge. How should we punish Yao Shu for his actions? Ji Jiutian glanced at Yao Shu. Send him to the criminal court for punishment. Also, throw his disciple over as well. Every force had their own rules. That was the reason why the criminal division existed. Ji Jiutian was not a kind person to begin with. How could the punishment he set be easy? Therefore, the moment Yao Shu is sent to the Hall of Crime, his life will be worse than death. Yao Shu knew this as well. His legs turned to jelly and he collapsed to the ground. His expression changed from one of high spirits to one of despair. Ji Jiutian walked toward Yun Luofeng. A smile appeared on his beautiful face, and a ray of light flashed in his long and narrow eyes. Long time no see. His lips curled into a light smile. After greeting them, he turned his gaze towards Yun Xiao. Of these 2 men, one was cold and expressionless, while the other was flirtatious and elegant. A light breeze lifted their robes. The 2 of them stood side by side, but they were not inferior to each other. Ji Jiutian. Ji Jiutian slowly said his name. Yun Luofeng's man. This was Yun Zhao's self-introduction. He did not say his name. Instead, he said that he was Yun Luofeng's man. Chapter 1277. You're very strong. Ji Jiutian smiled. His smile was wild, and his eyes were filled with arrogance as if he did not care about the world. I wonder if I can fight with you. All right. Yun Xiao slowly released the young girl in his arms and shot a cold and grim gaze towards Ji Jiutian as he spoke expressionlessly. Yun Xiao. Yun Luofeng tugged on Yun Xiao's sleeve and frowned. I don't know what level Ji Jiutian is at. As if afraid that Yun Luofeng would worry, Yun Xiao's eyes softened. He patted her hand and said, "Wait for me." Yun Luofeng gently let go of him. She stared at the man's handsome and cold face and her lips curled into a smile. All right, I'll wait for you. She believed in Yun Shao. Since Yun Shao had promised Ji Zhoutian, he had the strength to fight. Yun Shao kissed Yun Luofeng's forehead and said softly, I'll be back soon. He raised his head and looked at Ji Zhoutian. His expression turned cold once again. Let's go. Ji Zhoutian laughed wildly. I'd like to experience the Ghost Emperor's power. Ghost Emperor. When the elders who had yet to leave heard Ji Zhoutian's words, all their gazes instantly landed on Yun Zhao's face. The headmaster had called him the Ghost Emperor. Could this man be the legendary Ghost Emperor who had destroyed the Limitless Sept on his own? Yao Shu fainted from the shock. He could have offended anyone but the Ghost Emperor. Based on the Ghost Emperor's power, even if all the elders attacked him at the same time, they might not be his match. At that moment, Yao Shu finally understood why this man had dared to attack Meng Qi. He had the ability to look down on the West Continent College. The funny thing was, it was too late for regrets. Yao Mingqi lay on the bed, waiting for Yao Shu's good news. But in the end, a group of guards tied her up and dragged her to the penal court. What do you want? How dare you attack me? My master won't let you off. When the guard heard this, he sneered coldly, You mean Elder Yao Shu? Oh, no, he's no longer an elder. He can't even protect himself, how could he care about you? Unable to protect himself. Yao Mingqi shuddered, her face filled with terror. How could this be? How could father be unable to protect himself? Didn't he go find Yun Luofeng to vent his anger on him? Could it be that the elders of the East Courtyard stopped him? Don't try to scare me. I know that the people in charge of the criminal division are from the East Courtyard. Those old guys from the East Courtyard have always been on the opposite side of my master. It must be the people from the East Courtyard who want to take revenge on my master. That's why they ordered you to catch me. You'd better let me go, otherwise, my master will not let you go. Shut up. The guard felt that Yao Mingqi was too noisy, so he took off his socks and stuffed them into her mouth. A wave of foot odor assaulted Yao Mingqi's nostrils, almost causing her to faint. Chapter 1278. Yao Shu's expression changed. He raised his hand to touch Yao Mingqi's back, but found that he did not know where to start. Yao Mingqi did not notice Yao Shu's strange behavior. She was still angrily complaining about the two guards, and even told Yao Shu to cut them into pieces. Mingqi. Yao Shu sighed and smiled bitterly. This time, I'm afraid I can't help you. Father. Yao Mingqi raised her teary eyes and looked at Yao Shu in confusion. Father, what do you mean? What do you mean by I can't help him? Your father's meaning is very simple. He can't even protect himself, how can he help you? It was unknown when Ling Hai had appeared in the criminal hall. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the father and daughter who were hugging each other with disdain. You're talking nonsense. Yao Mingqi glared at Ling Hai. My father is an elder like you, what right do you have to punish him? Ling Hai smiled coldly. You probably don't know, but the dean has returned. Furthermore, he personally sent your father to the criminal court. What? Yao Mingqi was stunned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she looked down at Yao Shu. Father, he's lying to me, right? You're an elder of the school, why did the dean send you to the criminal court to be punished? Yao Shu lowered his head. He did not dare to look at Yao Mingqi's bright eyes, afraid that he would break down. Yao Mingqi, you still dare to ask why he was punished? Isn't this all your fault? Ling Hai's eyes were sharp. You framed Yun Luofeng and caused your father to be punished. Yao Mingqi's body trembled. Her eyes flashed. What did you say? When did I frame her? Don't make things up. You took a liking to Yun Luofeng's husband and framed her so that your father would stand up for you. But you didn't know that our dean and Yun Luofeng were old friends. Because of this, he sent your father to the criminal court to be punished. The dean and Yun Luofeng were old friends. Yao Mingqi bit her lips tightly as her body trembled violently. Impossible. She didn't believe any of this. Absolutely not. Also. Ling Hai paused for a moment, then continued, the man you like is the Ghost Emperor who has recently caused a huge commotion in the Western continent. Boom. This last piece of news once again blew up Yao Mingqi's mind. Her mind was a complete mess, and she was completely unable to walk out from this kind of shock. That cold-faced man was the rumored Ghost Emperor. It was said that the Ghost Emperor wore a mask all year round, so no one knew what he looked like. Even he had guessed that the Ghost Emperor was so ugly that he didn't dare to show his face, which was why he used a mask. However, she never expected that the legendary Ghost Emperor would be so handsome. Yao Mingqi bit her lips tighter and tighter, blood dripping from her lips. She wanted to digest this information in her heart, but her mind was filled with the man's incomparably handsome face. Ling Hai, I will definitely take revenge on you for injuring me today. Furthermore, there are so many people in the Western continent who want to kill the Ghost Emperor. If I were to spread word of this, the Western Continent Academy would also be implicated. At that time, you will probably suffer the wrath of all the strong cultivators in the mainland. Yao Shu's eyes were fierce. His voice carried a hint of threat. Of course, if you let me go, I might keep this matter to myself forever. Chapter 1279. Ling Hai sneered, the dean has given his orders. Once you enter the criminal court, there is no need for you to leave. Tell me, how are you going to spread this news? Moreover, if I let you leave, I'm afraid the academy will truly be in danger. Boom. This news caused Yao Shu's body to tremble. He suddenly got up from the ground and charged at Ling Hai like a madman. I don't believe it, I don't believe that the dean would be so cruel. I have served the school for so many years. No, I want to see the dean. Let me see the dean. Get lost. Ling Hai roared in anger and violently pushed Yao Shu's body with his palm. He patted his clothes and sneered, Yao Shu, you and your daughter reap what you sow. If you hadn't targeted my disciple first, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Court Master Jean, the dean has ordered that these two cannot be left alive. With that, Ling Hai waved his sleeves, turned around and left. Father. Yao Mingqi looked hopelessly at Yao Shu, tears streaming down her cheeks. You must have a way to save me, I don't want to die. Yao Shu laughed bitterly. He couldn't even protect himself, how could he save Yao Mingqi? Mingqi, it was father who harmed you and father who couldn't protect you. I have offended the dean, only death awaits me. Hearing Yao Shu's words, Yao Mingqi's face filled with despair. At this moment, she finally understood the meaning of regret. After Yun Luofeng left the school, she asked Huli to buy her medicinal ingredients. Fortunately, the Western continent had an abundance of medicinal ingredients. In a short while, Huli had brought the ingredients she needed. Once she had the ingredients, she went to the kitchen to brew the medicine. She then poured the little Loli's tears into the medicine pot. In an instant, a fragrant scent wafted into her nose, making her feel refreshed. Master, after you finish this bowl of medicine, your hand will recover. Little Mo stood beside Yun Luofeng and blinked her eyes as she spoke. Without hesitation, Yun Luofeng poured the medicine into the bowl and drank it in one gulp. As the medicine entered her body, she tried moving her right hand. Her originally immobile right hand could finally move freely. Her hand had completely recovered. I haven't exercised my right hand for a long time, so it's a little stiff. Little Mo, I'm going to practice. Remember to call me when Yun Xiao comes back. All right. Little Mo nodded. I will inform you when Yun Xiao returns. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng walked into the backyard without saying anything. However, Yun Xiao only returned when night fell. When Yun Luofeng saw Yun Xiao, he asked, "How is it? Who won between you and Ji Zhoutian?" In the face of Yun Luofeng's question, Yun Xiao replied honestly, "It was a draw." A draw. Is Ji Zhoutian so powerful? Yun Luofeng narrowed his eyes as a glint flashed across his eyes. Master, Ji Zhoutian is an old demon who has lived for so many years. How can he not be strong? Little Mo appeared out of nowhere and curled his lips. His childish face was filled with speechlessness. That was true. Compared to Yun Xiao, Ji Zhoutian had already lived for far too long. Otherwise, the Ji family would not have treated him as their ancestor and he would not have become the academy's principal. Master, when you see Ji Zhoutian tomorrow, don't forget to ask for the fruit of the soul. Little Mo's eyes darted around. Yun Luofeng came to the West Continent Academy for the fruit of the soul. Now that he had a relationship with Ji Zhoutian, how could he not make use of it? Fruit of the soul. Yun Xiao was silent for a moment before he took out a red fruit from his lapel. Are you talking about this? Chapter 1280. That's right, this is the fruit of the soul. Yun Luofeng took the scarlet fruit from Yun Xiao and asked in confusion, "Why do you have the fruit of the soul?" Ji Zhoutian threw it to me before he left. Although Yun Xiao regarded Ji Zhoutian as a rival in love, he would not hide what he had done. Hence, he told Yun Luofeng the truth. Hearing this, Yun Luofeng's heart clenched. She put the fruit of the soul away and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. I will thank him properly the next time I see him. Yun Zhao's gaze fell on the young girl. You came to the West Continent Academy for the fruit of the soul. Yun Luofeng nodded. Xiao Bai is injured, she needs the fruit of the soul to recover. Then why didn't you tell me? Yun Xiao took 2 steps closer to Yun Luofeng. As long as you say the word, I can snatch as many fruits of the soul as you want. Yun Luofeng shook her head. Yun Xiao, the elders of the East Academy have treated me well and have given their all for me. I don't intend to fall out with them, so I didn't tell you anything. Just as she finished speaking, the man's arm suddenly reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed the young girl's lips fiercely. Don't look. Xiao Mo hurriedly covered her eyes. Master, Yun Xiao, you can kiss slowly. I won't disturb you. A cunning glint flashed across his eyes. He quickly walked out of the room and closed the door. Yun Luofeng was out of breath from Yun Zhao's kiss. After a long while, the man finally moved his lips away. She also took this opportunity to take a few deep breaths. Feng Yun Zhao's finger gently stroked the young girl's lips. In the future, don't hide anything from me. Meeting the man's deep black eyes, Yun Luofeng nodded gently. All right. No matter what you want, I can take it for you. Yun Xiao lowered his head and said with a determined expression, even if you want the entire world. As long as Yun Luofeng asked, so what if he took the entire world? If he could exchange it with a smile from her, the world was nothing. Yun Luofeng narrowed her eyes. She took 2 steps forward and pressed Yun Zhao's body tightly against the wall. She raised her head and kissed the man's lips forcefully. Yun Xiao, tonight, I'll be on top. Outside the courtyard, the night breeze blew gently. The man in red stood on the branch, his gaze fixed on the brightly lit courtyard. His long and narrow eyes flashed with an almost undetectable light. Master. Two beautiful maids landed behind the red-robed man and said respectfully, "Yao Shu and his daughter have been dealt with." The red-robed man's voice was domineering and arrogant. A rose-like smile blossomed on his bewitching face. His smile was beautiful, but it was also sharp and unapproachable. Reporting to Master, Yao Shu wanted to escape with Yao Mingqi. This subordinate has already killed him. The maid lowered her head and respectfully replied, "All right, let's go. After disappearing for 10 years, I should let those people in the Western continent know that I'm still alive." Ji Zhoutian flicked his sleeves and turned around. His red robes were like the scorching sun, exceptionally eye-catching in the dark night. The maids did not even dare to lift their heads. However, from the corner of their eyes, they could see the bruises on that beautiful face. Master was injured. The Ghost Emperor's power had already grown to such an extent that even their master had been injured by him. Chapter 1281. Western Continent. Inside the Continent Lord's mansion. A middle-aged man with a dignified expression sat upright on a chair at the head of the table. Below him were the leaders of the various powers, and two beautiful maids were behind the middle-aged man, lightly hammering his shoulders as they bowed and groveled. "Continent Lord, this Western Continent Academy is looking down on us too much. We've sent people to look for them a few times, asking them to join our ranks, but they've always rejected us." "That's right, the Western Continent Academy is too arrogant, completely looking down on everyone. Do they think that Ji Zhoutian is still in the academy? Without Ji Zhoutian, how can the Western Continent Academy be so arrogant?" Everyone looked at each other, denouncing the Western Continent Academy. In their eyes, Ji Zhoutian had already disappeared for more than 10 years, which meant that he had given up on the Western Continent Academy. The current Western Continent Academy had long since fallen to the middle of the river, and was no different from them. If that was the case, what qualifications did the Western Continent Academy have to be arrogant? The middle-aged man slightly lowered his brows. It was obvious that he was very dissatisfied with the actions of the Western Continent Academy. A ruthless light flashed past his eyes, and he said coldly, "If the Western Continent Academy does not join us to encircle and annihilate the Ghost Emperor, then there is no need for the Western Continent Academy to exist. Continent Lord is wise." Everyone was overjoyed. They had long since disliked the Western Continent Academy. They really didn't know where these people got their arrogance from, to dare to look down on them. Now, with a single sentence from the Continent Lord, it meant that the Western Continent Academy, it would disappear in the long flow of history. "Continent Lord, I suggest that we bring our troops to attack the Western Continent Academy now." An old man stood up and said angrily, "It's good to let the people of the Western Continent understand how foolish it is to disobey the orders of the Continent Lord's mansion." The Continent Lord's mansion was the highest authority in the entire continent. The 7 continents had 7 countries, and the one who ruled over these 7 countries was the Continent Lord's mansion. It was no different from the dynasties of the other continents. "Let's go." It was unknown who waved his hand, but the others also stood up. Their voices of condemnation spread throughout the night sky of the entire Western Continent Prefecture. Everyone raised their fists, wishing that they could annihilate the Western Continent Academy and the Ghost Emperor at the same time. At that moment, a chuckle pierced through the air and reverberated in everyone's ears like thunder. "Who?" The Continent Lord's face suddenly darkened. His sharp gaze shot forward, and a murderous intent spread from his eyes. Under the night sky, the red robe was like blood, as if it had dyed the entire night red. The man was like an extremely seductive flower, beautiful yet dangerous, full of sharpness. After seeing the domineering face of the man, the expressions of the people from the Continent Lord's mansion changed from anger to shock, and finally turned pale. "I've only disappeared for 10 years, but you're already looking down on me." It seems like you want to taste the price of blood from more than 10 years ago again. The night breeze blew, lifting the man's blood-red robe. His eyes were smiling, and the corners of his lips curled up into an arrogant and unruly smile. If it was said that Yun Shao was a god of death, then he was undoubtedly a devil god. Even if it was just a smile, it would send chills down one's spine, leaving one so nervous that one would find it hard to breathe. You. Why are you back? The continent lord's lips trembled. He looked at the domineering man standing under the night sky like a red rose in fear. Involuntarily, a chill rose in his heart, and his body gradually trembled. Chapter 1282. More than 10 years ago, they had tried to kill Ji Zhoutian just like how they had surrounded the Ghost Emperor today. They would never forget that day when blood dyed the entire western continent red. Corpses were everywhere, and countless ghostly wails and wolf howls resounded in the western continent for half a month. It could be seen how many vengeful souls had died in his hands. That day, the setting sun was as red as blood, and the man's red clothes were very bright. He was like a god of death that had walked out of hell. The sword in his hand was like a scythe that harvested lives, easily taking away a bright red life. Originally, the Western continent's forces were not as backward as they were now. Back then, the Western continent was one of the best among the 7 continents. It was because of that battle that the former continent lord had died at the hands of this man. Countless experts had been annihilated, causing the current Western continent to fall behind to such an extent. Everything was caused by this man. Ji Zhoutian's domineering eyes gradually swept towards the continent lord. The smile on his beautiful face was filled with contempt. His eyes were as if he was looking at an ant, disdainful. Compared to the previous continent lord, you are really far inferior. At least when he saw me, his legs wouldn't tremble and he wouldn't even be able to sit steadily. Gulp. The continent lord swallowed hard and said with a trembling voice, Ji Zhoutian, I remember that more than 10 years ago, you were also injured quite badly. It seems that even now, your strength has not recovered to its peak. Even if my legs and hands were crippled, it would still be easy for me to take your lives. What was insolence? Everyone present had experienced this word from this man. But who gave him the right to be arrogant? Regardless of whether Ji Zhoutian's strength had recovered or not, they did not dare to take this risk. The scene from more than 10 years ago had brought too much shock to their hearts. So much so that even now, it still made them feel fear. Not to mention fighting, they did not even dare to look at Ji Zhoutian. I came here today to tell you, don't think that just because I disappeared for 10 years, you can do whatever you want to the Western Continent Academy. The man slightly raised his eyebrows, his tone arrogant and domineering, incomparably insolent. Even if I don't like this Western Continent Academy, it is still left behind by my old friend. I have the right to let it exist forever. No one could say that a force could exist forever in this world. On this continent, if one was not careful, a force could be destroyed. However, no one dared to refute Ji Zhoutian. With Ji Zhoutian's power, the power he wanted to protect would definitely exist forever. Also, Ji Zhoutian laughed maniacally, the Ghost Emperor is not someone you can provoke. I advise you not to provoke him. The continent lord's face turned even paler. Ji Zhoutian, we can promise not to act against the West Continent Academy, but aren't you meddling too much? Our encirclement and annihilation of the Ghost Emperor is our business, it has nothing to do with you. This sentence, he said it very strongly, but his trembling legs had already revealed the fear in his heart. His long and narrow eyes fell on the continent lord and the smile on Ji Zhoutian's lips carried a trace of coldness. It is indeed your business to encircle and kill the Ghost Emperor, but if you hurt the little girl by his side, then I will have to interfere. In the Wuhui mainland, he did not care about Yun Luofeng's matters. He did not even provide her with any help. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.